Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku had flame Quirk part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story, My Hero Academia fan 132 from Wattpad. So let's start the video. Izuku was a little boy who was now 6 years old. He and his sister have been mostly playing with their friend 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 had become quite arrogant and was quite offensive to others, but to the two of them he was really nice. Since just a few days, a new girl lived near them. She was going to the same school as them, however she never really talked there and avoided people. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 started bullying her, however quickly stopped when Izuku began butting in and made sure he wouldn't bully her. The girl glanced at him a lot, sometimes even stared at him, but he had never even heard her speak once. Even if the teacher told her to explain something, she just sat in silence. People just found her strange. Sarah, however, noticed that she was doing it with a reason but felt like it was out of place to ask. She, however, did make sure no one else would bully her, just like Izuku, of course, and eventually 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 joined that group. Some people still kept bullying the girl. However, once Izuku and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 also stopped the bullying towards the girl, they stopped. Everyone knew how scary 𝐀𝐻𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 was and they didn't want him on their trial, but they were more scared of the 𝗧𝗱𝗡 twins since they seemed like hell itself when angry. The girl was thankful to the trio for keeping the bullies away, yet never spoke to them until a sudden encounter. Izuku was walked through a forest on his own. Sarah was doing some homework at home which Izuku had already finished. They might be twins, but Sarah rather skipped out on homework. Yet since she had to finish it by tomorrow, she just had to make it. Izuku kept going through the woods until he suddenly heard some noises. He didn't know what it was but walked towards it. He hid himself behind a tree and looked. Once he got there, he saw the girl. She was practicing her quirk. Izuku looked at her. She had long silver hair and red eyes, and she certainly wasn't ugly. Izuku actually thought she was really pretty. However, it was a shame she never spoke to him. He would love to get to know her better, and she seemed interested in that as well, yet something was holding her back. Izuku kept watching as she trained her quirk. He even got a smile on his face while watching. Although he felt like a creep, he was interested in how she trained her quirk, but he also didn't want to disturb her. Eventually, however, she wanted to take a break. She grabbed a towel she brought and wiped her face. But then she saw Izuku sitting there. "Sorry, I heard you training and didn't want to disturb you," Izuku stated as she sighed in relief. "Are you always training here?" he asked as she just nodded. "Always alone?" he asked as she nodded again. She then sat down against a tree. "Is it all right if I sit with you?" Izuku asked. She looked a bit surprised at him and hesitated for a bit but then moved a little and nodded. Izuku walked towards her and sat next to her. "This spot is really nice and quiet. I can see why you picked it for training," Izuku stated with a smile as he looked up at the leaves in the trees. Eri didn't say anything and just stared at him. "You feel uncomfortable, don't you?" Izuku asked as she slightly and sadly nodded. "Is it because of me?" he asked as she shook her head. Izuku then saw something in her eyes, sadness and a lot of it. "Something is bothering you, isn't it?" Izuku asked as she looked surprised, jumped up and stepped away from him. "I'm sorry, it wasn't my place or intention to start talking about something that's a sensitive topic to you," Izuku stated with guilt. "I'll leave now. Sorry for bothering you, and I'm sorry if I upset you somehow," Izuku stated as he got up and wanted to walk off. Suddenly he was grabbed by the arm. Izuku turned around and saw the girl looking towards the ground with a sad look. "Please don't go," he heard her say. He was surprised that she spoke for the first time. However, he felt really sad as he heard her voice crack with only those 3 words. "All right, I'll stay," Izuku stated as they sat back down. However, she didn't let go of his shirt. She was afraid that if she did, he'd leave. "Sorry to ask, but why don't you ever speak?" Izuku asked. "No offense, if you don't want to speak to any of us I can understand, but I was just curious. You don't have to answer if you don't want to though," Izuku stated. "It's not that I don't want to, it's just I'm afraid of bonding," she stated. "What do you mean?" Izuku asked. "I ran away from home. I'm an orphan now, although I was adopted. However, my adoptive stepfather is a really dangerous man. I'm actually not with him anymore and am a real orphan. However, he still sees me as his daughter," the girl explained. I see, you are afraid that if you bond with someone he'll hurt the people you care about, or you'll have to leave them eventually because of it, Izuku stated as she nodded. Well, if that's the case I'll just have to train harder and get stronger so I can protect us both. That way you won't be alone and you won't have to worry about him, Izuku stated with a smile as she looked surprised and also shocked. You're an idiot, she stated. Maybe, but I'm aiming to become a hero anyway, and I won't stop any lower than the top spot, so I'll have to be stronger anyway, and my first checkpoint to getting to the top is getting strong enough to protect the girl right next to me, Izuku stated with a smile. The girl actually had a slight smile on her face because of it. You sure are a strange boy, you know that? She asked. I know, I also know you wanted to talk to me numerous times yet never did. I'm glad we got to talk now though, Izuku stated as he placed his head back against the tree, closing his eyes. I'm glad too, she said as she leaned her head against his shoulder. He feels so warm and he's so kind. Also cute but still. Normally once I tell people this they get scared and run away from me, yet he stays and says he'll become stronger to protect the both of us, she thought. I'm glad he came and I'm glad I started to live here. If it wasn't for him I would still be alone, she thought. By the way, can I ask? What's your Eri, she stated, cutting him off. Well, hi Eri, I'm Izuku, Izuku stated as he smiled at her. Hi Izuku, she said with her own smile. Izuku felt happy to see her smile as well. Suddenly Izuku noticed someone sneaking through the bush in front of him. He saw an older man with a mask over his mouth only revealing his eyes. He also held a knife in his hand. Stay still and don't panic, Izuku stated as he got up and walked forward. Eri was surprised to hear him so seriously all of a sudden. Stop hiding and come out, I know you are planning something to attack either me or the girl. Izuku shouted. Eri was surprised at first, but shocked when she suddenly saw a man walking from out of the bush. His eyes just screamed the murderous intent, his face was covered by a mask, and he held a knife in his hand. Quite a confident brat, aren't you? The man spoke up. Izuku, however, didn't respond. Izuku, watch out. That man is dangerous. He even has a knife. Eri yelled at him. Izuku looked back. Don't worry, I'll be fine, he stated softly with a smile. Looking away while someone is ready to kill you. You've got a death wish. The man shouted as he tried stabbing Izuku. Izuku, however, jumped back as the flames in his feet boosted him. He then jumped forward boosted by flames and gave a spinning kick to the man's neck, crashing him against a tree. Izuku then turned to Eri and smiled again softly. Eri looked at him. He looked so gentle, but she also noticed his green eyes glowing. Eri also noticed the flames he was using. The man got up again. You little brat, you'll pay for that. He shouted as Izuku opened his fist and a flame appeared on his hand palm. If you want to play with fire, you'll have to be prepared to get burned, Izuku stated seriously. The man actually got scared after Izuku's kick and how serious he was. He was even more shocked that a kid from 6 years old could be this determined, but also this strong and scary. Fine. I'll go. The man stated as he ran off. Wow, Izuku, you are amazing. Eri yelled excitedly. Really? I only gave him one kick. I never thought he would get scared of that, Izuku stated bluntly. But you have a fire quirk, don't you? She asked him. I do. It's called pyrokinetic. It seems every time I use it, my eyes start to glow. I can use it to power up, speed up, but also long-ranged, Izuku explained. I can also use it to regulate the heat around me and in my body, Izuku stated with a smile. You already can do all that with your quirk. Eri asked shocked. Yeah, I have this friend Bakugo and my sister Sarah. We mostly play around with our quirks. Well, mostly while hiding somewhere because we always get scolded, but since we mostly play around with our quirks, we've managed to get a considerable amount of control on it already, even if we're just 6, Izuku stated. Why don't you join us next time? We're mostly in this forest as well, just not this part, Izuku stated. Is it really alright? You guys might get target as well, Eri stated. Like I said, if that's the case I'll just have to get stronger to protect both of us, and don't you underestimate Bakugo and Sarah, they are both skilled as well. Sarah is the most skilled though, Izuku explained. Do they want me around them though? Eri asked sadly. Why wouldn't they? The 3 of us kept bullies away from you. And 𝐬𝐬 also noticed something was up. She just felt like it wasn't up to her to pry, Izuku explained. 𝐻𝐵𝐾𝐲 has respect for everyone that can keep up, although that's barely no one, only 𝐬𝐬 and me so far, but as far as I could see in your training just now, you'll be able to 𝐻𝐵𝐾𝐲, Izuku answered with a smile. When are you guys going to play again? Eri asked. Probably tomorrow after school. If you tell me where you live, I can come and get you before we leave, Izuku stated. I'll show you when we walk back, Eri stated. That's fine, 𝐻𝐵𝐾𝐲. Could you show me now though? I'll have to head home now, Izuku stated while scratching his head. Eri just smiled at him. Under one condition, she stated while blushing a little. Sure, what is it? Izuku asked curiously. Could you activate your quirk? She asked. Izuku looked surprised, then smiled and activated his quirk. Small flames lightly shot from his body while activating his quirk, and his eyes started to glow. So what now? Izuku asked with a soft smile. Nothing, I just wanted to see it again. You have beautiful eyes, but they are even prettier when they glow like that, she stated, blushing. Izuku looked surprised but smiled again. Thank you for the compliment, Izuku said. You look really beautiful yourself though, Izuku stated as he scratched his cheek with his finger while lightly blushing and looking away. Eri didn't believe her ears though. She was burnt red from blushing. Well, let's go, Izuku said as he snapped her back to reality. Eri nodded with a smile and quickly ran after him. They walked through the forest back to the city. She then showed where she lived. It was an orphanage around the shopping mall. Izuku, however, lived around the edge of the city as he lived a few minutes away from Dagobah Beach. They were quite a bit away from each other, however Izuku didn't care about that. Thanks for walking me home, although it was for showing you where I live, Eri stated with a smile. Don't worry about it, I'll see you tomorrow at school, Izuku smiled and then ran off. See you tomorrow, Izuku, she said softly as if she was in the clouds. The next day, she was being quiet in class again. However, during lunch break, Eri quickly ran towards Izuku and his group and greeted them all. 𝐬𝐬 and 𝐵𝐾𝐲 both looked surprised as they then looked in surprise at Izuku, who just talked with her like it was normal. Izuku then explained to them that he found her in the woods and they managed to talk. He also explained the situation to them and they had the same reaction that he had, which made Eri smile even more. Eventually after school they went to the forest again. Their playing actually started with a race to the top of the forest. The forest was on the side of a hill, and the top of the hill was actually the finish line. They all used their quirks to move as fast as possible. They started with just running. However, eventually 𝐬𝐬 took the lead as she started to fly with her quirk. Izuku and 𝐵𝐾𝐲 smirked and quickly followed. Eri was amazed by them. They really knew how to use their quirks, and they were also really fast, yet she couldn't let them outdo her. She managed to make wind swirl around her as she then bursted forward, also flying. She actually managed to make a draw with 𝐵𝐾𝐲 as Izuku was still a bit faster than the both of them. However, 𝐬𝐬 had won like usual. Afterwards they began training their moves and their own training, and even sparred together. It was mostly Izuku and 𝐵𝐾𝐲 sparring and going to far just to end up getting their butts beaten by 𝐬𝐬 to stop them. But they all had fun in what they did together. This then happened on a daily basis. Time skip years passed. Izuku, Eri, 𝐵𝐾𝐲 and 𝐬𝐬 were all 16 and were about to give the entrance exam to UA a try. Alright, here are the papers for your options on what you want to do next. Oh, who am I kidding, you all want to become heroes, don't you? The teacher asked as most of them cheered. Just SCKS for those demon extras that they don't get further than sidekicks in their life, 𝐵𝐾𝐲 stated cocky like usual, which angered everyone. 𝐬𝐬 just had a playful smile on her face as she found it amusing. Eri was holding back her laugh as Izuku just laughed out loud. You never change, do you? Izuku asked. You think that's funny, 𝐻𝐵𝐾𝐲? Another student stated as Izuku just glanced at him with a serious look. The student gulped and sat back down. Izuku, Eri, 𝐵𝐾𝐲 and 𝐬𝐬 actually dominated the school, not really in a wrong way. Well, apart from 𝐵𝐾𝐲, that is, they were leagues above the rest of the school in terms of skill, ability, power, and speed. They only once angered the Midoriya twins and it didn't end well for them. 𝐬𝐬 just smiled even brighter at Izuku. Really, Izuku, I think 𝐵𝐾𝐲 is rubbing off on you, she stated playfully. You are one to talk. You are even scarier, Izuku stated. Might be true, 𝐬𝐬 stated with a chuckle. If someone is really scary, it's Eri though. She looks harmless but can really rough people up, 𝐬𝐬 stated as she placed a hand under her chin and looked at Eri. Eri looked curiously and just smiled. Well, can't argue with that, Izuku stated. School was over and the group was slowly walking towards the shopping mall. They wanted to grab a drink before heading home. So we're all going for UA? Izuku asked. Of course, it's the most prestigious hero school, everyone would aim to get in there, 𝐬𝐬 stated. Would be a waste of my talent if I went lower than that, 𝐻𝗠𝐽 stated. Well, I want to be a hero and don't want to be separate from you guys. I don't know if I'll be as good as you guys and manage to get in, but I'll certainly try my best. Eri stated. Girl, you shouldn't underestimate yourself, you really have talent, and you really are fast and strong, 𝐬𝐬 stated. You even beat 𝐻𝗠𝐽 once. That was dumb luck and you know it. 𝐻𝗠𝐽 shouted. Sure, that's why you kept refusing to fight her again, 𝐬𝐬 stated with a chuckle. The hell did you just say to me, you bai? Choose your words carefully, you might get to talk like that to others, but not to me, 𝐬𝐬 stated with a cold glare. Honestly, the beautiful and deadly type, Izuku sighed. Ah, thanks little brother, 𝐬𝐬 said as she suddenly tackled Izuku in a hug. What for? Izuku asked as she playfully rubbed her cheek against his. To call your sister beautiful, she stated. Well, beautiful and deadly, Izuku corrected. Who cares, you called me beautiful, it makes a sister smile to get a compliment from her little brother, 𝐬𝐬 stated as she showed a blinding smile. When 𝐬𝐬 smiled, Izuku knew immediately why he wanted to become stronger in the first place. Even if she was his sister and even if she was stronger than him, he'd give everything to keep that smile on her face. Izuku really loved his sister. Even when there was a new love in his life, he still cared more than anything for his sister, and her smile made him forget all his worry. Eri and 𝐻𝗠𝐽 always smiled at 𝐬𝐬's smile, but mostly when they saw Izuku staring at it with a loving gaze, they knew it wasn't love like lovers, but they know how much Izuku loved his sister. They saw him lose his mind once when a villain pulled a sneak attack on her. Izuku badly beat the villain and managed to calm down afterwards, but they did know how much he cared for his sister. They sat at a terrace and ordered a drink. Afterwards they bring Eri back home. Eventual 𝐻𝗠𝐽 takes his own turn towards home. Once 𝐻𝗠𝐽 leaves, 𝐬𝐬 suddenly to Izuku's arm happily with a bright smile. 𝐬𝐬, Izuku asked. Shush, just let your sister enjoy time with her brother. I know you love me as your sister, but then again I love you too, little brother, she stated. Sometimes I want to do things like this as well and just be close with you too, she stated with a chuckle. Izuku just accepted it and walked home with her. A lot of people looked at the two, some curious, some surprised and some smiled. Izuku didn't really mind at all. She was right, he loved his sister, and she loved him as well. Izuku, 𝐻𝗠𝐽, 𝐬𝐬 and Eri trained a lot for the coming months until it then was finally time for the entrance exam. They learned that the entrance exam would be split into two groups. However, Izuku's group was made up of 4 people, so it was 2 in each, and they had to promise not to help each other since it would be unfair to other students. Saving them was another story if the situation needed it, but aiding in just getting points would disqualify them on the spot. They accepted this and went into the big hall where their entrance exam would be explained. They learned that there were 4 sorts of robots to destroy to gain points. Their points scaled from 0 to 3, they could best avoid the 0 points because it didn't have any meaning in fighting that. Izuku was paired with 𝐬𝐬 and Eri with 𝐻𝗠𝐽, although they knew from 𝐻𝗠𝐽 that he wouldn't work together with anyone. Everyone stood at their gates waiting for the exam to start. Izuku walked towards 𝐬𝐬 but was stopped by a tall guy who moved his arms like robots. Are you trying to distract someone before the exam starts? Are you just here to cause problem for others, or are you here seriously for the exam? The boy asked. Sorry, but that's my sister, I just wanted to wish her good luck, Izuku said with a smile. Oh, if that's the case then I'm sorry, I noticed you talking with someone else during the instructions, so I thought you were here to hinder others, the boy spoke up. It's alright, I understand, Izuku stated as he placed a hand on the boy's shoulder and walked past him. Hey 𝐬𝐬, good luck during the exam, Izuku stated with a smile. Same to you, make sure you get in alright, she said as she winked at him with a smile before the door opened. Go, they heard, and the two of them bursted inside with tremendous speed before then splitting up. Everyone was shocked by their sudden burst, and especially that a cute girl like Sarah had such a quirk. "What are you guys waiting for? You waiting for an invitation or something?" Mike asked as everyone looked surprised. Real life doesn't have a countdown either, and seeing those two, you better hurry before there are no points left, Mike stated, pointing at the flaming explosions all over the place. Everyone quickly ran inside. Meanwhile, at the teacher's room, cameras were pointing at promising students. First it showed someone with multiple arms who used extra ears and eyes to scout, a girl that placed earphones into the ground to hear her enemies, and then there was 𝐒𝐿𝐴 who blew the robots away. However, the most surprising was when one screen went to Sarah and one to Izuku. Those two are really talented. Even though they came together, they don't show interest in helping each other. It's more like they are making a race against each other, and I have to say that 𝐒𝐿𝐴 guy and that girl 𝗧𝗚 that came, all four of them show amazing talent, a bear/mouse-like creature called 𝗀𝐻𝗧𝗍. You are right, they certainly are exceptionally skilled. I won't surprise me if they make it in, a girl in skin-tight suit named Midnight stated. Aizawa, another teacher from UA, was watching them closely through it all. All Might, the #1 hero, the symbol of peace, and the newest teacher, was watching intently as well. "There are a lot of promising students. How about we put them to the test?" 𝗀𝐻𝗧𝗍 stated as he slammed a red button. At both fields a lot of noise could be heard. Izuku was really close to it and turned around and saw a giant zero-pointer. There was no point in fighting that thing, but if that thing starts attacking randomly it could injure a lot of people, Izuku thought. He then noticed most of the students running away, also the guy that spoke to him at the entrance. Izuku was just staring at the robot calmly, however his eyes slightly widened when he heard someone wince in pain. He looked down and saw a girl with brown hair on the ground. He noticed her leg was stuck, however the robot was about to slam his foot on top of her. Izuku quickly bursted forward, leaving a crater on the ground from the force, and flew towards its head. The teachers were surprised by this action, however when they looked to the screen that showed the foot and the girl, they noticed another girl standing underneath the robot's leg. She used her flames to stop the leg from crushing the girl that got stuck. Meanwhile, Izuku went upwards and created a powerful fireball which he shot to the robot's head, making it fall backwards and explode. He immediately shot down, managed to pull the rubble off of the girl's leg, and Sarah then grabbed her as they both quickly shot away before the robot completely blew up. Afterwards the exam was over and Recovery Girl entered the field. She kissed the girl to the head and her leg immediately started healing. "Good job there, Izuku," Sarah said. "Same to you," Izuku smiled at her. Then the girl walked towards the, "Hi there, I just wanted to say thank you for saving me," she stated. "Don't mention it," Izuku stated with a smile as Sarah smiled as well. "What are your names?" The girl asked. "I'm Sarah Midoriya," Sarah stated. "I'm Izuku Midoriya," he stated. "What about you?" Sarah asked. "I'm Ichako Uraraka," she stated. "Well, Uraraka, let's hope we'll all make it in and see each other again here at U," as Sarah stated as she turned around and left with Izuku. Izuku, Sarah, 𝗧𝗚, and 𝐒𝐿𝐴 met up at the gate again and went for another drink again just to relax and to talk about how the exam went. Afterwards they all went back home to rest. A few weeks later, the letter from UA came. Izuku and Sarah both opened the letter in their own room. Eventually they learned that they had the same amount of points, and that Izuku and Sarah had both passed. Once those words were spoken, Izuku heard running approaching his room. "Izuku!" Sarah shouted as she bursted into his room. She kissed his cheek and hugged him. "We both made it in. We're going to UA," she yelled in excitement. "We sure are. It's our first real step to becoming heroes." Izuku and Sarah were beyond happy that they both made it into UA. They learned that class would start next week, and they were already wondering who would be in their class. They knew the two of them would be in Class 1A as All Might explained it in the letter. But they were wondering who else was in their class and if 𝗧𝗚 and 𝐒𝐿𝐴 were in it too. They were planning on going to 𝐒𝐿𝐴 and 𝗧𝗚 again tomorrow so they could ask then. For now, it was time to celebrate. 𝗀𝐻𝐿𝐴, the mother of both Izuku and Sarah, had prepared katsudon since the twins strangely held a love for it. Izuku and Sarah decided to stay home for the day and just enjoy their day with their mother. The day itself, however, flew by crazily fast. The next day they met up with 𝗧𝗚 and 𝐒𝐿𝐴 as 𝗧𝗚 had a bright smile while 𝐒𝐿𝐴 held a confident smirk. Good morning, guess you two made it in 𝐬𝐻, Sarah said with a smile. Sure did, 𝐬𝐻 said happily. What did you expect? Of course someone with my talent would get accepted, 𝐻𝐵𝐲 stated. Stop being so arrogant all the time, my god, Sarah stated as she sighed. I have a reason to be, come on. I'm a big deal, 𝐻𝐵𝐲 stated. Yeah, that's why everyone in our little group has beaten you, Sarah provoked as Izuku started laughing. I could beat you all right here and now with ease. 𝐻𝐵𝐲 yelled. Care to give it a try? Sarah asked with a smirk that gave HM the chills. Thought so, she said with a smile on her face. Sarah could really tease and provoke someone and yet still look so innocent and soft. Her attitude could also change in the matter of a second. But then again, if 𝐻𝐵𝐲 had respect for someone, it would definitely be Izuku and Sarah. He sure had an amazing quirk himself, but those two had an even better one. Sure, it couldn't compare to his raw destructive power. However, 𝐻𝐵𝐲's power was just an powerful explosion. They could do a lot more with their flames. So which class are you 2 inches? Izuku asked. I'm in 1, 𝐬𝐻 stated. Same here, 𝐻𝐵𝐲 answered. Guess we're all in the same class then, Sarah stated. We're also in 1A, she added. Afterwards they went back in the forest and trained a little more. However, the time flew by so fast that it was soon time to go home already. They hanged out for the remaining days 𝐬𝐻 until it was finally time to go to UA. They had to pack the day before, since they would be staying in dorms. However, they were allowed to go home in the weekends to visit their parents. They were all very happy about it since they did want to keep seeing their parents. Once there, Aizawa was waiting for all the Class 1A members, and once everyone arrived they were taken to their dorm. Before they reached the dorm, Sir, may I blast this pervert? Izuku asked as this surprised Aizawa. Why do you want to blast him? Aizawa asked. He's trying to look under my sister's skirt and is literally drooling a few centimeters away from her, Izuku stated, having a flame in his hand already. Aizawa looked and indeed saw the pervert trying to look. Go ahead, Aizawa stated as Izuku instantly blasted the little pervert's face. Everyone was surprised but laughed as the pervert groaned in pain. Alright everyone, this is your dorm from now on. This is the common area. It has a living room big enough to hold you all. It also has a dining room and the bathrooms are down here 𝐬𝐻. Aizawa explained as he had walked inside and explained it all. Do my ears deceive me? The bathrooms are in the common area. The little pervert stated with a drooling face again. You sure you want to give it a try? Aizawa asked. Mineta, the little pervert, had an ominous feeling and looked around. Izuku, Sarah, 𝐬𝐻 and 𝐻𝐵𝐲 had their quirks ready to destroy the little brat if he had the ball to peek. I won't have to tell you to behave, 'cause if you don't they'll have your head, Aizawa stated with a smirk which scared the little diaper boy. Wait, 𝐻𝐵𝐲. Why are you ready? Izuku asked surprised. I hate that twerp already, and besides can't let him spy on my friends. Can I? 𝐻𝐵𝐲 stated with a smirk. You are right about that, Izuku stated with a smile. Alright, here is the layout of the rooms. The boys are on the right, and the girls are on the left, he stated as he handed out the papers for everyone's rooms. You can put your stuff in your room, then I want you all to come to the classroom, Aizawa stated as he walked off. Everyone walked off to their room, quickly placed their bags there and left again. Once Izuku got to the class, everyone was already sitting there. Seats are the same as anime, it's just that 𝐬𝐻 replaced Hagakure, and Sarah replaced Koda. Alright, now that everyone is here, it might be sudden but I've got an announcement to make, Aizawa stated. First, today we'll hold a test to see what you guys are capable of, and if you have any promise to become a hero. Second, I know it's sudden but on Friday we're holding the sports festival, Aizawa stated. What? A few students shouted. The sports festival already? Uraraka shouted. Yes, it's because right now you barely know anything about each other's powers, except for a few of you, Aizawa stated as he looked at Izuku, Sarah, 𝐬𝐻 and 𝐻𝐵𝐲. That way everyone should have a bit of a fair chance, he stated. What do you mean fair chance? Kaminari asked. So no one knows anything from your quirks, except if you know them from outside school. So you don't know others their strengths or weaknesses, which makes it fair, Aizawa explained. He has a point. Some of us might be way stronger than others, But if they don't know our strengths and weaknesses, the others won't know what to be careful of and can't exploit any weaknesses right from the start, Momo stated. Alright, enough chatting, put on this gym uniform and meet me outside, Aizawa stated as he handed the uniforms out. Everyone quickly changed and got outside. Alright, we'll hold some sort of fitness test to see how good you guys really are. I don't want to see anything else but your 100%. Aizawa stated. This seems so fun. Mina suddenly stated as Izuku face-bombed. Fun, you say? Fine, the last person will be expelled. Is it still fun for you now? Aizawa asked a bit angrily. What? You can't do that on our first day. Mina shouted. Here at UA we can teach however we want, and I for one do have the authority to be able to expel anyone if I think they don't have any promise to become a hero, Aizawa explained. Most of the people gulped as the fitness test started. Izuku, Sarah, Eri and 𝐻𝐿 were usually in the top 5, with Sarah leading off course, Izuku close after, then 𝐻𝐿 and Eri. Sometimes someone else made it to the top spot, so did the pervert take. Top spot by side jumping, he bounced off between two of the ball from his head and made an amazing score. Uraraka won the ball throw since she got infinite, the ball literally left the earth and was somewhere in space. The speed course was Ida at first, however when it was time for Izuku's group, they all beat his score although 𝐻𝐿 and Eri were just barely able to pass it. Eventually Sarah, Izuku, 𝐻𝐿, Eri and Todoroki took the top 5 in that order. Mineta was last, but then Aizawa explained that he lied about the expelling part, which shocked most of the students. You actually took that seriously? Izuku asked. Wait, you knew he was lying? Kaminari asked. Well, I noticed the moment she said it would be fun, Aizawa wanted to see our best, and if you see it as a game you won't be giving your best, Izuku explained. The class sighed that they fell for that. Afterwards normal classes started and afterwards it was time to unpack at the dorms. After everyone was done they met up again in the common area where everyone sat talking until some of the students turned to Izuku. So Izuku, which one of your group is the strongest? Uraraka asked. Sarah, that's not even up for debate, Izuku stated as Eri and 𝐻𝐿 nodded in agreement. Sarah looked proud by that statement. Really? You two don't seem far apart, 𝐻𝐼RO stated. Maybe in skills, but trust me, in combat it's very different. I mostly get my butt handed to me, Izuku sighed as he remembered the last time she beat him. Yeah, the last time was hilarious, 𝐻𝐿 stated. Shut up 𝐻𝐿, you haven't even touched her in battle, Izuku sighed as everyone got wide eyes from that. You yourself can barely do any damage against her, 𝐻𝐿 stated. Shut up or I'll beat you both at the same time, Sarah said playfully to stop them arguing. Both of them gulped and this made everyone laugh. All jokes aside, Sarah is really strong. I don't know if it's that I'm unconsciously holding back not going serious against my own sister, or if she is just so much further ahead than me, but she's certainly far ahead in fighting ability, Izuku stated. Ah, you care for me that much that you unconsciously hold back. How sweet. She said, teasing him as she jumped in his neck with her arms around his neck. Are you two really brother and sister though? Mina asked. What do you mean? Izuku asked curiously as Izuku and Sarah held the same curiosity on their face. Well, it's not like you don't look familiar, it's just the way you act around each other, Mina stated. We're just really close, we've always had a close bond, and we also really love each other. As brother and sister of course, it would be weird if it was something else, Sarah explained. Besides, someone else has gotten my brother's heart already, although he doesn't realize this yet, Sarah teased. She then gave a quick look at Eri who was a blushing mess. So? Momo asked as she looked at Eri then at Izuku. Izuku looked curiously at Momo as Sarah held a big smile. Ooh, although the one is afraid to admit it and the other doesn't realize it yet, Sarah stated. It's about DMN time they do, 𝐻𝐿 stated. Wait, even you know about it? Kaminari asked. Yeah. Why is that so surprising? 𝐻𝐿 asked. You just seem hopeless in terms of feelings, Kaminari blurted out, making Izuku spit out the drink he just took. Everyone started laughing as Kaminari ran away, followed by 𝐻𝐿. The days passed quickly like that, just school and having fun at the dorms, although Izuku and his group also started training again. Then it was finally Friday, time for the sports festival. Everyone arrived early and put on their gym uniforms like they were supposed to. Then they walked towards the field. Everyone was getting ready until Midnight asked 𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐿 to say some encouraging words on the stage. "Don't you dare," Izuku said as he left. 𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐿 got on the stage. He grabbed the mic and, "I'll become number one," he stated as everyone began shouting at him. "Idiot," Izuku said as he face-palmed. Suddenly 𝗧𝗟𝗘 jumped in his neck. "Good luck, little brother," she stated as she kissed his cheek playfully. "Same to you, sis," Izuku smiled confidently. They then heard 𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐿 again. "Struggle as best you can, I want some worthy pebbles on the road," he shouted towards the people. Izuku just walked up to the stage, lifted him up and literally threw him off the stage as he sighed and walked down. Midnight wanted to continue, but then 𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐿 started aging. "What the hell was that for?" 𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐿 shouted. "You brought this upon yourself, you can't just go there and be so dumb and arrogant," Izuku shouted back. "I can be as arrogant as I want to. They'll never beat me," he shouted. "Now I just hope someone grinds your face in the dirt," Izuku sighed. "Are you two done?" Midnight asked. Yes. They both shouted in unison. All the students and audience started laughing. "Alright, with that out of the way, let's start the first part of this year's sports festival. There are 2 events this year, a race where the first 8 will pass," she explained as everyone then had to get together at the gate. 𝗧𝗟𝗘 had been poking Izuku in the side the entire time. Even though she was a beautiful innocent girl, and she looked really mature, she could be very playful, especially with Izuku. "Ready, go," Midnight shouted as the door opened. Izuku and 𝗧𝗟𝗘 both shot off using their flames. Eri quickly followed them, surrounding herself by wind. 𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐿 blasted after them with his explosions. Todoroki froze everyone, then he froze the field while pushing himself forward over the ice by shooting his flames. Kirishima, Momo, Azui and Iida made it past the ice and were in pursuit after them. Tokoyami had been a little in front of Todoroki as he started running the moment the gate was opening to avoid Todoroki's ice. However, Todoroki easily passed him as he glided over the ice. It didn't take long until they reached the first obstacle, which showed the robots from the entrance exam, the 0-pointer. They all passed them fairly easy as they were too fast for the robots. Next was a giant hole in the ground with robes above it, but since they were flying that didn't really bother them. Izuku, however, started running afterwards, since flying would just avoid the obstacles. 𝗧𝗟𝗘 did the same, and so did Eri. 𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐿, however, was being petty and kept flying. Izuku noticed a minefield and gained more speed through his flames. He bursted through the field, creating explosions. One of those blasted 𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐿 back a little as Todoroki and Eri then passed him. Sadly for Izuku, 𝗧𝗟𝗘 passed him last second and he only got second place. "That was fun," 𝗧𝗟𝗘 stated with a smile. "You did good though, you almost had me there," she added. "And the students are coming in," Midnight shouted. "First place we have 𝗧𝗟𝗘 Midoriya. Second place Izuku Midoriya. Third place Eri. Fourth place is Todoroki and fifth place is 𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐿. Sixth is Iida. Seventh Tokoyami and lastly number 8 is Kirishima." Midnight shouted as everyone cheered. "Izuku!" 𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐿 shouted. "You did that on purpose?" she stated. Izuku just laughed. "No, but it was hilarious," Izuku stated. "You can say that again," 𝗧𝗟𝗘 and Eri stated, laughing. "All right. We're going on to the next event. It will be 1-on-1 fights tournament style," Midnight stated as everyone cheered. Somehow people love it when people beat the CRP out of each other in such events. The matchups were as followed. Izuku vs Todoroki, Eri vs Iida, 𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐿 vs Kirishima, 𝗧𝗟𝗘 vs Tokoyami. First it was Izuku vs Todoroki. Both of them stood on the field. "I won't lose to you again," Todoroki just stated. "Lose to me? Have we fought before?" Izuku asked. "You beat me in the fitness test and here today again as well," Todoroki stated. "But this time I will win," he stated. "Hate to say this, but I might be a bad matchup for you," Izuku stated. "Ready? Begin," Midnight shouted as Todoroki immediately shot a glacier at Izuku. However, this crumbled to the ground in a second as Izuku punched it with his flames. Todoroki then shot his flames at him. However, Izuku just lowered his arms and took it head-on. However, it didn't even leave a scratch on Izuku. What? Todoroki stated surprised. Like I said, we might be a bad matchup, your ice will be broken by my flames, and your flames can't hurt me. Yet, Izuku stated. What do you mean yet? Todoroki asked. Tell me, is this your first time fighting with your flames? Izuku asked. It is. But Todoroki asked. It lacks the power your ice has, you have been training only on your ice and forgot to power up your flames. If your flames held the same power as your ice it might have a chance, but now it's untrained and really doesn't hurt. Then again, flames don't affect me much anyway, but if you had trained your flames, it could have done some damage, Izuku explained. He's right, I wanted to win this with only my ice. I'm using my flames since I know that if I stick to my ice I'll only waste my energy, he thought. Why don't we finish this in one big blow then, Todoroki stated. I can charge more power, but like you said it's untrained so I can't control it, so I can't control the power I use with it. It's literally all or nothing, Todoroki stated. Izuku had a smile on his face and held his hand up and created a strong fireball. Todoroki had intense flames shooting from his body as he released everything he had into one blast. Izuku shot his fireball and it crashed right into Todoroki's flames. The flames stayed perfectly in the middle of the two until the flames created a massive explosion. Izuku stood firmly in place, however Todoroki was pushed to the edge. He wanted to step forward, however was met with Izuku in front of him. Sorry, but I'm not losing here, Izuku stated as he punched Todoroki in the face, making him fall off the stage. The winner of this short but strong fight is Izuku. Midnight shouted as everyone cheered. Izuku looked at the stance for Class 1A. Sarah winked at him with a smile and Eri just looked at him amazed with a slight blush on her face. Bakugo smirked that Izuku beat the overconfident half and half bastard. Next up was Eri versus Ida. Ida had made it a battle of speed, however Eri was a bit faster than Ida and with her wind she managed to make him lose balance before she blew him away with a mighty push of wind, launching him right at the wall. Everyone was amazed by the speed they held. Next up, Bakugo versus Kirishima. This was a really one-sided battle as Kirishima hardened his body and tried to endure Bakugo's explosions. However, he quickly ran out of steam as Bakugo's explosions were too much for him and he fell over exhausted. Last it was Sarah versus Tokoyami. At first Tokoyami put up a good fight, however it was very obvious that the more Sarah used her flames, the smaller Tokoyami got and the weaker he got. Eventually Dark Shadow was too small to even be a threat and Tokoyami had to end up giving up since he definitely couldn't put up a fight against her without Dark Shadow. Half finale matches were Izuku versus Eri, Bakugo versus Sarah. Izuku versus Eri was about to start as both of them walked up the field. Are you all ready for this to start? Midnight asked as everyone cheered. Izuku and Eri walked towards each other, which surprised everyone. Ready? Midnight asked as both of them raised their arm. Start, she shouted as the two fist bumped and jumped back, immediately covering themselves in their element. Eri shot a tornado of wind at Izuku, who shot his flames to counter it. Even though Izuku was quite a bit stronger than her, she had the advantage since his flames were just blown away by the wind. However, what really gave her the advantage was her control over the wind. While the tornado and the blast of fire clashed, wind swirled around Izuku's leg. Then she made the wind pull his leg, making him lose his balance. Izuku's blast got overpowered since he didn't have any stability, however he managed to dodge it by using the flames in his feet. Izuku then covered himself in a sphere of fire as Eri then covered herself in a sphere of wind. Both charged at each other as their spheres kept clashing, which created powerful shockwaves. Izuku was the first to leave his sphere as held out his hand and sended multiple streams of flames towards her. Eri just blew the wind from her sphere away to leave it, as this also pushed Izuku's flames away. Izuku, however, charged at her. She tried stopping him by surrounding herself with 4 tornadoes while also shooting streams of wind. Izuku managed to skillfully avoid all the streams of wind as well as the tornadoes. However, once he reached her, he got hit to the head by the wall of wind that rose up to defend her. She engulfed herself in another tornado. Everyone was amazed by her control, especially to create 5 tornadoes at the same time as well as being able to move and even keep attacking. Izuku, however, knew her weakness. He got to the ground as close to the tornado as possible. He placed his hands on the floor as a circle of flames surrounded the tornado. Small flames appeared, however it wasn't the size of the flames that mattered, but the warmth. Warmth pushes wind up, and if Izuku had control over something, it was definitely the warmth of his flames. He was quickly placing more and more heat in his flames as the tornado slowly disappeared in the sky. Eri was surprised by this as he had never done that before, however Izuku then reached her and threw her out of bounds. Even after that skillful display of control over the wind, the winner of this match is Izuku. Midnight shouted as everyone cheered for the great battle. Next up, however, was 𝐒𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 versus 𝗧𝗓. The match started really quick, just like 𝐒𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's earlier match. It was really one-sided, however this time not in his favor. 𝐒𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 kept attacking multiple ways, however 𝗧𝗓 easily blocked him with her flames without even moving from her spot. He even used his howitzer, however once he did, she created a powerful fire tornado from underneath him before he reached her and he was sent flying. Eventually, the first time she moved in that fight, she kicked him to the head into a wall, making her the winner. Now it was time for the final match. Izuku versus 𝗧𝗓. You know you really are frighteningly strong, Izuku stated as they both stood on the field. Well, I've got a reason to become strong too, you know, 𝗧𝗓 stated. Really? Izuku asked. Well duh, my little brother is working hard to be able to protect the people around himself and also to protect me, but then again who protects you? I'm training so I can be able to support my little brother and protect him as well, she stated with a soft smile. Izuku smiled back at her. Now who do you think will win this battle? Will it be the skillful Izuku? Or the overwhelming 𝗧𝗓? Midnight shouted in the mic as everyone cheered even louder. Izuku for the first time took a fighting stance and so did 𝗧𝗓. Everyone was really excited since they only saw those two fight without taking a stance. Ready? Begin! Midnight shouted as both of them charged at each other. Their fists covered in flames clashed and an enormous explosion followed, launching both of them back. Izuku then flew up from the smoke as he blasted multiple streams of fire at her. However, those were cancelled out by a big tornado of flames. Izuku went around it to find her, however she was nowhere to be seen. Then suddenly at least 10 streams of fire were shot from the tornado directly at Izuku. Izuku jumped backwards and sideways to dodge the streams one by one. However, in the meantime 𝗧𝗓 got behind him and blasted him in the back. Izuku was sent flying as he then pushed his hand against the floor to push himself up. He then spinned around and landed on his feet facing her again. Not bad, you are doing better than before, 𝗧𝗓 stated, still a smile on her face, but the look in her glowing eyes was serious. Still, you are as overwhelming as ever, Izuku answered. He then charged at her again, however before he got halfway, he completely engulfed himself in flames and his flames suddenly split up into 5. However, the flames didn't become smaller, they all stayed the same size. 𝗧𝗓 was surprised by this and she was deflecting the first 3, however he wasn't there. She dodged the 4th and went OT the 5th. You are here then, she shouted as she destroyed the flame, however he wasn't there. Sorry, but I'm here, Izuku stated as he shot an incredibly powerful blast from up close. She managed to block it with her arms engulfed in flames. Phew, that really was close, she stated, surprised. But you certainly are rough with your sister, she teased. Well, it would be insulting to hold back against you, especially since you are going all out against me as well, Izuku explained. Well, that's true, you still won't win though, she stated. Izuku then jumped back and placed his hands together in front of him. He started creating a strong fireball. 𝗧𝗓 smirked and did the same. They both shot their blasts at each other and the moves clashed. Somehow their clash was shooting a bit of lightning around, as well as a powerful shockwave. Both had trouble keeping that power up and pushing the other back. However, 𝗧𝗓 was slowly taking the lead and pushed the clash towards Izuku. Suddenly the pushing stopped and Izuku's eyes widened as he saw a flame breaking through the clash of their attack. I win, 𝗧𝗓 stated as she placed a hand on Izuku's chest and blasted him off the stage. The winner is 𝗧𝗓, Midnight shouted as everyone cheered loudly. She jumped off the field and helped Izuku up, who crashed against the wall. Are you alright? She asked softly. Yeah, it doesn't hurt that bad, Izuku stated as he got up. Well, you got close to beating me this time, she stated. Yeah, but I still got wiped off the stage by you, Izuku stated. Oh well, who cares, she smiled at him and pulled him in a hug. Afterwards the top 4 were asked on stage and were given medals for their spots. First Bakugo and Eri were given the medals for 3rd place. Then Izuku for 2nd place, and 𝐬𝗓 for 1st place. Suddenly someone with a camera walked up and wanted to make a picture of the stance and also from 𝐬𝗓 for reaching 1st place, however she had something else in mind. She quickly grabbed Eri and Bakugo closer as well as Izuku. The 4 of them stood on the spot for 1st place as they all had their arms over each other's shoulder, all with a smile on their faces. And 𝐬𝗓's head against Izuku's. 𝐬𝗓 had won the sports festival, Izuku got 2nd place, Bakugo and Eri had a shared 3rd place. When a journalist wanted to take a picture, 𝐬𝗓 quickly pulled the others to the 1st place spot and hugged them with a burnt smile as she placed her head against Izuku's. Afterwards everyone went back to UA. Once at the dorms, everyone was glad it was over. Sure, it was an amazing experience to participate in the sports festival, however they were all tired from the race, and the others also from the fights. Izuku stood talking with Todoroki, who had asked Izuku to help him train with his flames. However, he didn't notice 𝐬𝗓 sneaking up behind him. Once she got behind him, she was looking intently if she could spot anything on him. Todoroki had a weird face which made Izuku curious, but right as he wanted to ask what was wrong, 𝐬𝗓 pulled his shirt up from the back. 𝐬𝗓, just what are you doing? Izuku asked, a bit flustered as the other girls saw a bit of his trained body. Momo, Mina, Azui, Uraraka and Jiraiya were gawking after seeing just a little bit of it. Eri, however, had wide eyes and a bright red face. She looked as if she was about to faint if anyone touched her. Kaminari noticed this and walked towards her and waved in front of her face. Hey Izuku. Kaminari stated. What is it? Izuku asked. I think you broke her mind, Kaminari stated with a blank expression pointing at Eri behind him. Suddenly 𝐬𝗓 pulled his shirt even higher. 𝐬𝗓, again what are you doing? Izuku asked. Making sure you really don't have any injuries from when I shot you into that wall, she stated. If anything, my chest hurts more than my back since you literally shot the blast on my chest at point-blank range, Izuku chuckled. He instantly regretted saying that. No, don't you dare. Izuku quickly yelled as he jumped away from her. 𝐬𝗓 had a weird look on her face. Izuku, what did you do? Bakugo asked. She was looking if I had any injuries, Izuku stated. I see, you told her about your chest, didn't you? Bakugo asked. Wait, you knew? She asked, curious, shocked and surprised all at once. Bakugo felt a chill and started sweating. Why were you two hiding this? She asked while giving them an ominous feeling. Oh, is it that time already? Time to do my training, Izuku stated, hoping to get away as she grabbed his shirt from the back. You need sisterly love. She shouted as she then jumped in his neck. Everyone just laughed at how silly they were acting. Meanwhile, Bakugo managed to sneak off to his room. Izuku suddenly pushed her off and ran outside. What is it, Izuku? 𝐬𝗓 asked playfully, but then as she saw him looking with a serious but worried expression, she looked around as well. I felt this really strong gaze on me. It was as if I felt the intention to kill even from here, Izuku stated as this surprised her. Well, let's just let it go for now. It's no point worrying about something we don't have any control over, 𝐬𝗓 stated as she placed a soft hand on his shoulder. Izuku nodded and walked inside. Everyone started cheering again for 𝐬𝗓 since she won the sports festival. Izuku eventually agreed to help Todoroki with his training on his flames. Hey Izuku, 𝐬𝗓 suddenly said. Hey 𝐬𝗓, what's up? Izuku asked. I heard we can visit home in the weekends. Wanna go so mom tomorrow? She asked. Sure. I'd love to, Izuku stated. Alright, we'll go tomorrow morning, that way we can stay a bit longer with her and tell her what we did so far, 𝐬𝗓 stated with an incredible smile. Even if she was his sister, he really loved her smile. It made him happy to see his sister smiling and to see how happy she was. Izuku smiled back at her. Come on, tell him already. Uraraka stated as she pushed Eri forward. Izuku noticed this and looked curiously. Eri stepped towards him blushing madly. Hey Izuku. Eri stated. Hey Izuku, come here a sec, Kirishima suddenly shouted. Sorry Eri, I'll talk to you when I get back, Izuku stated as he placed a hand on her head and left. Don't worry, Eri, Sarah stated with a soft smile. He'll notice eventually. I know how you feel about him and I know how close the two of you are, Sarah stated. Well, not as close as you are though, she stated a bit sadly. Please don't compare it to between Izuku and me, we're twins, we've been together all our lives, she stated. It's only natural that we are so close and have such a bond, but don't worry, you won't lose him, she smiled at her and gave her a hug. Thanks, Sarah, Eri stated with a sweet smile. Izuku was walking outside with Kirishima and the other guys. They were going to ask if they were allowed to use the pool Sunday to relax before school. At first they wanted to ask for tomorrow, but Izuku and Sarah would be away almost all day with their mother. Izuku knocked on the teacher's room and they were allowed inside. What can I help you with? Aizawa asked. Hello, sir, we would like to ask if we could use the school pool Sunday. We wanted to start with training and afterwards relax a little, at least if that's allowed, Kirishima stated kindly. Sure. But why ask now for Sunday? Aizawa asked. They wanted to ask for tomorrow, but Sarah and I will be going home to our mother tomorrow. They only found out about that while walking here, Izuku stated. I see. Will I allow it? You can use the pool till 5 p.m., Aizawa explained as the guys smiled and cheered. Aizawa gave a slight smile and nodded. Everyone then walked back. It was already pretty late, and the girls had ordered Chinese. Everyone ate dinner. However, afterwards Izuku suddenly started acting strange and said he would be going to bed early. Once Izuku laid on his bed, he was just staring at the ceiling when someone suddenly knocked. Before he could answer, the door opened and Sarah stood in the opening with her shoulder against the post. What's up? She asked. Oh hey Sarah, nothing, Izuku stated, avoiding her eyes. I know when you are lying, something is bothering you. Let me guess. You have the same bad feeling. Sarah asked. You have it too? Izuku asked as she nodded. She walked inside and closed the door. She walked towards the bed and Izuku moved a little as she laid next to him on the blankets. I don't know what it is and I don't know how to describe it. I just have this incredibly bad feeling and I don't know why, she explained. Same here, but what could happen? Izuku asked. Not much, the worst case would be an attack, but we just wiped them out together, Sarah stated laughing. There fell a silence. Aren't you scared? Of becoming a hero, I mean. Sure, I'd love to be one, but facing stronger and stronger villains, I heard there is a villain even All Might couldn't beat. It terrifies me thinking of facing off against such a monster, Sarah stated. Izuku felt her shake a little. Don't worry, Izuku said as he placed his hand on hers. You'll never face him alone because your brother will help us well, Izuku stated with a smile. You're right, silly me, she stated as she laid on her side and hugged him. You are the best little brother, she stated softly while closing her eyes. You are too, sis, Izuku stated as he hugged her back. Afterwards Sarah went to her own room and for some reason she left with a tear streaming down her face. That's strange, why did I have a tear streaming down me face? She asked herself silently, but then she just shrugged it off and walked to her own room. The next morning, they both got up early, even before the others woke up and left for home. The streets were relatively quiet as most people were still sleeping. Izuku and Sarah walked towards their home and after a while they reached it. They knocked on the door and 𝐴𝐻𝐿 opened the door. Izuku, Sarah. It's so good to see you too, she immediately stated. Hi Mom, they said in unison as they walked in. So what brings you two here? 𝐴𝐻𝐿 asked. We just wanted to surprise you with a visit, Sarah stated. We missed you and we knew you missed us, even if it was our first week at you, Izuku stated. Speaking of you, 𝐴𝐻𝐿 ran off and came back with a picture. I actually got a copy from the original since I know the person that made the picture. 𝐴𝐻𝐿 said happily. Oh wow, the picture turned out really good, Sarah stated. I'm more amazed at the fact that Bakugo had a calm smile instead of his usually murder grin, Izuku stated as his mother and Sarah laughed. Well, you are right about that. He is usually one to scream around looking for fights, Sarah stated. Even so, he's a good kid and is really motivated to become a hero, 𝐴𝐻𝐿 stated. That's true, but he's mostly trying to kick our butts, Izuku sighed. Not like he ever will though. It will be a cold day in hell if I lose to him, 𝗧𝗟𝗘 stated with a laugh. They kept talking for a while longer. They were all smiling and laughing, however little did they know that would all change for the worst. 𝗏𝐻𝐿 wanted to get something out of the bedroom, however once she arrived there was a massive explosion blowing through the apartment, also creating a large smoke screen. Izuku and 𝗧𝗟𝗘 managed to create a shield of fire, and it blocked most of the damage. Izuku was still hit. 𝗧𝗟𝗘 saw that Izuku had a small hole in his side as something shot through it. "Are you alright?" she asked worriedly. "Why?" "Yeah, I'll be fine, what about Mom?" Izuku asked, but right as he turned towards the bedroom, they saw her body laying on the floor. Her body was such a mess that they didn't even have to check if she was alive or not. There was no doubt that she had died. 𝗧𝗟𝗘 suddenly pulled Izuku's arm over her shoulder and went to the back of the apartment. "What are you doing?" Izuku asked. "Getting us out of here. There is nothing we can do for Mom now. We have to get to safety, you know it as well as I." "This wasn't a normal explosion," she stated as they then both bursted away by using their quirks at the same time, shooting away with tremendous speed. They managed to reach an abandoned building. "I think we'll be safe here for a little while," she stated. She then started looking around the building, and eventually she found some old bandages. She pulled Izuku's shirt off and also ripped some off to place on the wound. "Push on it with some good force to stop the bleeding. I'll help with the bandage," she stated. Izuku placed the part of his shirt on the wound as he winced in pain. 𝗧𝗟𝗘 quickly pulled the bandage around him to relieve him from his pain. "Are you all right now?" she asked. "Much better," Izuku breathed in pain as there fell a silence. "So what now?" Izuku asked. "There is no way that could be a random attack. The blast was too strong for that," Izuku stated. "That's right, they aimed at the two of us. Mom was just something extra for them," 𝗧𝗟𝗘 stated as she felt angry. Izuku couldn't blame her. He was said as well, however he was glad 𝗧𝗟𝗘 at least was safe. "We can't stay here for too long. We took a direct line here. They'll be able to find this place fairly easy," 𝗧𝗟𝗘 stated. "Let's get out then while we can," Izuku stated as she nodded. The two of them quickly got outside and noticed there was no one there. They ran towards the street as they wanted to head for UA. However, right at that time, multiple warp gates opened up around them. Izuku immediately turned around and stood back to back with 𝗧𝗟𝗘. Both had their eyes glowing to indicate that they activated their quirks. "So you are the kids Shigaraki and the boss spoke about," they heard someone say. Right as they looked, they saw a man with short brown hair and a strange beak to protect his face. "What's with the beak?" Izuku bluntly asked without thinking. "Oh, don't mind that, it's to keep out the filth," man stated. Izuku and 𝗧𝗟𝗘 just heard the despise towards them through his voice. "So who are you?" Izuku asked. "My name is 𝗏𝗏, but I rather people call me Overhaul," he stated. "Alright Overhaul, what do you want with us?" 𝗧𝗟𝗘 asked. "I don't want anything, it's Shigaraki and our boss that want the two of you, or your quirks for that matter," Overhaul stated as his eyes narrowed. "What if we refuse?" Izuku asked. "I'm afraid you don't really have a choice. I thought your mother would teach you that. She was a warning," Overhaul stated as this set Izuku off. 𝗧𝗟𝗘 noticed this, however instead of fighting, she grabbed his arm and flew off again. "Get them!" Overhaul shouted. 𝗧𝗟𝗘 flew through the streets and gained a small lead as she stopped in an alleyway. "Izuku, you have to go now," she stated. "What? No way. I'm not leaving you behind." Izuku yelled. "You'll have to, I'm going to hold them back. You have to get to UA to get help," she stated. "No, we're leaving this place together. I'm not going to leave you behind here," Izuku stated. "Izuku, just please do as your sister tells you and get to safety. I won't be killed that easily," she stated softly as she placed a hand on his cheek. She heard the villains closing in. She kissed his cheek. "Get going, I'll hold them off," she stated as she walked towards the street to face them. She immediately shot a lot of flames at them as she then flew at them with attacks. Izuku gritted his teeth and was covered in flames. However, instead of getting to safety, he flew right after her as he crashed right into the middle of the group, causing an explosion. "I'm not leaving you behind," Izuku shouted as she sighed. "Fine, we'll do it together then," she stated a bit sadly that he didn't listen to her. She was very worried about Izuku because she heard the rumors about how strong Overhaul was, but also because she saw Muscular, another very dangerous villain. She knew there were a few other strong ones that she saw on the news. however she didn't know their names. They both got surrounded fairly easy again, however both Izuku and 𝐬𝐬 were attacking like crazy and were blasting large groups of villains away with their attacks. Izuku then created a fireball above his hand and slammed it down on the villains, blowing some of them away. 𝐬𝐬 shot streams of fire and hit multiple villains as well, however there were also attacks coming at her back. Izuku quickly flew behind her and blocked it with a shield of fire. "Thanks Izuku," she stated with a smile. "Sis, I'm going to charge a strong fireball, keep their attention for a little bit. Once I give the signal, please get out of the way," Izuku stated confidently as she smiled and nodded. Izuku stood on the ground, placed his hands in front of him and charged a big fireball, however he was placing more and more power in it. 𝐬𝐬 was blocking attacks from reaching Izuku as he was charging and using attacks of her own. She noticed, however, that the amount of villains seemed endless. No matter where she looked, there were villains everywhere. "All right, I'm ready," Izuku shouted as she moved away. Izuku then shot the incredible fireball at the villains. However, right as he did, 𝗏𝗡𝐿 showed up out of nowhere, grabbed 𝐬𝐬 by the throat and literally knocked the air right out of her with a punch to the lungs. He swinged her around and threw her right in front of the fireball. "𝐬𝐬!" Izuku shouted as he wanted to move his fireball, however right as he did, 3 warp gates appeared in front of him, with 2 behind it. The villains in front of him were Magna, Spinner and Toga. Magna and Spinner used their weapons to give a heavy blow to Izuku's chest and head as Toga slashed the right side of his chest. 𝗧𝗫 and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 appeared behind the group. Then suddenly Izuku saw 𝐬𝐬 reach the fireball as it exploded right as she reached it. "𝐬𝐬!" Izuku shouted from on the ground as he saw her body flying high up in the air before it landed on the ground. Izuku heard her coughing. She slowly tilted her head towards him. "Don't worry about me. Go," she stated as then suddenly spikes shot from the ground, piercing her through her body at multiple spots. "𝐬𝐬 knew," Izuku shouted with tears in his eyes. He saw 𝐬𝐬, blood coming from her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "Please get to safety, forget about me, and run," she said weakly as she gave him a last smile. "Poor thing, let me get you out of your misery," 𝐿 stated as he walked out of the group. "No, 𝐬𝐬, 𝐿, leave her alone. Don't you dare hurt her," Izuku shouted in anger. Then the other villains all got in front of 𝐬𝐬, the League of Villains and 𝐿. Izuku managed to get up, blast the villains in front of him away, however 𝗧𝗫, 𝗏𝗡𝐿, 𝗏𝐻𝐿, Spinner, Magna and Toga had disappeared. However 𝐬𝐬 was gone as well. And all that remained was a pool of blood. "𝐬𝐬, where are you? 𝐬𝐬?" Izuku shouted, now crying. "Do you want to know what my quirk does?" 𝐿 asked. "My quirk is to reassemble and disassemble. I used my quirk to destroy and repair the ground how I want it to," 𝐿 stated. "𝐬𝐬, what did you do to 𝐬𝐬?" Izuku shouted. "Well, I don't see her here. What do you think I did? I just told you about my quirk, so it should be obvious," 𝐿 stated with narrowed eyes. Izuku's eyes widened as he gasped. No. Izuku stated as he landed on the ground. "Does that mean," Izuku asked as he couldn't believe it. "Yes. She's dead," 𝐿 stated, and right at the word dead, Izuku's eyes widened even more as tears uncontrollably streamed down his face. Suddenly Izuku started breathing as he then gritted his teeth. "Aya! Izuku shouted as flames intensely shot from his body high up into the air as if the earth itself erupted. The power from Izuku's flames created a shockwave which destroyed all the windows nearby and pushed all of the villains back. Meanwhile, 𝐸RI and 𝗏𝗏𝐽 were walking with supplies for dinner. They were the ones that had to manage dinner today. "So, since we're halfway, you think we should go say hi to 𝗏𝗏𝐽?" 𝐸RI asked. "Well, it's been a while since I saw Aunt 𝗏𝗏𝐽, and it's not like we have anything to do back at you, so sure, why not," 𝗏𝗏𝐽 stated. However, at that moment they felt the shockwave even reach them as they also heard a loud scream followed by an incredible pillar of flames. "That's not good," 𝗏𝗏𝐽 stated with wide eyes. He placed his shopping bags on a bench nearby and ran towards the pillar. 𝐸RI did the same. They were not too far off and arrived in less than 2 minutes. However, when they arrived there, they still heard the scream from inside the pillar of flames. They noticed all the villains unconscious on the floor, and just one man standing with a strange beak on his face. Overhaul. When 𝐬𝐵 saw him, her eyes widened and her body started to shake. It can't be him, she thought as tears entered her eyes. They then heard the scream intensifying and the flames bursted forwards towards the man they saw. He slapped the floor and created a thick barrier from the ground which he recreated. However, when the flames disappeared, they noticed the barrier he created was completely destroyed and the man himself was badly wounded. Suddenly it got quiet, the flames slowly dying out. 𝐬𝐵 and 𝐵AKUGO noticed this, however they were filled with fear when they saw a badly wounded Izuku arrive from inside the Tower of Flames. However, when the flames died out, Izuku collapsed to the ground. Izuku! Both shouted as this also took the attention of Overhaul. 𝐬𝐵, there you are, my daughter, Overhaul stated. All the more reason I can't let go now, I have to retrieve that boy. Might 𝐬𝐵 take you, 𝐬𝐵? Overhaul stated as he slowly got up. Grab Izuku! 𝐵AKUGO shouted as he launched at Overhaul. 𝐬𝐵 quickly pulled Izuku on her back. She looked up and saw 𝐵AKUGO rushing Overhaul as he instantly destroyed every spike that was created. He then reached Overhaul and created the biggest explosion he could create right now, which launched Overhaul far back. He then ran back, grabbed 𝐬𝐵's arm. Let's go. We have to get to UA as soon as possible. 𝐵AKUGO yelled as she nodded with panic in her face. 𝐵AKUGO looked back once more, but Overhaul wasn't following them. He was struggling to get up. 𝐬𝐵 and 𝐵AKUGO were quickly reaching UA, but they noticed Izuku was breathing heavily. 𝐵AKUGO then also noticed a bandage around him which was bright red from his BLD. What in the world happened? 𝐵AKUGO asked silently as he noticed it. He figured he needed the teachers immediately to ask what to do, so he created large explosions into the sky. He even fired a big explosion towards 𝐂𝐮's office, which stopped just at the window to take his attention. When they ran inside the gate, the teachers immediately rushed outside. 𝐵AKUGO, what the hell? 𝐬𝐵 started but immediately stopped as they saw Izuku on 𝐬𝐵's back. No time for that now. 𝐵AKUGO stated, something happened, I don't know what, but when we were shopping we heard a scream, felt a shockwave and saw an intense pillar of flames. When we reached it we found the pillar, a lot of unconscious villains and another villain still standing. When the pillar died down, Izuku ate-paired from it and collapsed. He's badly wounded too. 𝐵AKUGO gave them a rushed explanation of what happened. To Recovery Girl now. 𝐬𝐵 stated as he, 𝐂𝐮, 𝐵AKUGO and 𝐬𝐵 ran to Recovery Girl. Once there, Recovery Girl was shocked to see Izuku in such a condition. 𝐵AKUGO, get Iida the class rep and inform the teachers of what you saw. Give them the description of the man you saw and let them tell the police. 𝐬𝐵 quickly stated. 𝐵AKUGO ran outside. Just what happened out there? What the hell happened out there? 𝐬𝐵 asked himself. It was Overhaul, 𝐬𝐵 suddenly stated as this shocked 𝐬𝐵. You serious? He asked as he knew how dangerous Overhaul was. She could only nod as her body started to shake again. She's completely terrified, 𝐬𝐵 thought. Suddenly Iida barged in and went pale when he saw Izuku's condition. My God! What happened to him? Iida asked, trying to stay calm. He however couldn't take his eyes off Izuku. Izuku was breathing heavily and had a pained expression. Suddenly Izuku gritted his teeth and grabbed his chest as flames started to swirl around his body. This is bad, 𝐬𝐵 stated. Iida, 𝐬𝐵, get the teachers, all of them, as fast as possible. 𝐬𝐵 ordered as he activated his own quirk. We don't have much time, use your quirks and do it, he yelled as they quickly went outside. How long can you hold this up? 𝐂𝐮 asked worriedly. It's my first use today, so I'd say 2 minutes tops in one go, 𝐬𝐵 stated. However, there won't be a second time, 𝐬𝐵 stated, gritting his teeth. Oswell. 𝐂𝐮, Recovery Girl, you have to get out now, 𝐬𝐵 stated as calmly as possible, yet they heard in his voice that he was serious. 𝐂𝐮 and Recovery Girl quickly ran outside as 𝐬𝐵 had to blink. However, in that instant, Izuku's body got engulfed in flames. As Izuku then gave a shout again, flames erupted from his body which caused an explosion and it blew up Recovery Girl's office. 𝐬𝐵 was blasted outside by the force as smoke came from the place where Recovery Girl's office was supposed to be. What happened? 𝐂𝐮 asked, however right as he asked. Izuku slowly stepped from the rubble, completely covered in flames. No, no, Izuku kept saying. What's going on? Why does he keep saying no? Aizawa asked silently. Suddenly he noticed Izuku taking a stance. I'll make you pay. He shouted as he instantly appeared in front of Aizawa ready to punch him in the face. Aizawa noticed the anger and sadness in Izuku's eyes as well as the tears streaming down, but he also noticed something almost as if his eyes were empty, as if Izuku himself wasn't there. Izuku was about to punch Aizawa, however his fist was blocked as All Might suddenly showed up just in time to block the fist. All Might then deflected the punch and pushed Izuku back. Aizawa, what's going on? I saw young Eri shooting past me with Ida and then I see a massive explosion. I rushed outside and I saw you being attacked. Who is that and what happened? All Might asked. That is Izuku, Aizawa stated, breathing in fear. He was an inch away from being in big trouble just now. As for what happened, I have no idea. He was brought here by Eri and Bakugo. They found him badly injured with a lot of villains unconscious. He suddenly activated his quirk and started screaming. Afterwards he kept saying no, and when he attacked he shouted that he'll make someone pay. Aizawa explained what he knew so far. But something is off. Sarah isn't here either. Did they get attacked and separate? Or did she get hurt or something? Aizawa asked himself as Izuku then launched at them again. Gra! He shouted as he smashed from above. All Might quickly grabbed Recovery Girl, Nizu and Aizawa and pulled them away just in time. Izuku's fist crashed into the ground creating a large crater. They noticed him looking up. They couldn't see his body, yet they saw the glow in his eyes through the fire. Aizawa, can't you erase his quirk? All Might asked. I can. I'll have to be able to see his actual body. His flames engulfed him and is way too thick to see his body. Aizawa explained as the other teachers got outside Oswell, with 3 other people. Eri, Bakugo and Ida also got outside, however were shocked to see Izuku engulfed in flames attacking teachers. They then saw Izuku place his hands on his head as he growled in pain. No. No, 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 no. He shouted as he gave another scream and his flames bursted even more fiercely. Aizawa, what's going on here? Mike asked. No time to explain. We have to find a way to calm him down or to get his body to show. I have to erase his quirk, Aizawa stated. What even is that? Midnight asked. That's Izuku, Bakugo stated as everyone saw the fear in his eyes. But I've never seen him lose his mind like this. Something terrible must have happened, he stated. Anyway, we have to keep him from attacking and moving around. 𝐶EMENTOS stated as he tried capturing him in cement. However, once it grabbed onto Izuku it also immediately got destroyed. Mike tried his scream, however the scream didn't even reach him as the flames somehow blocked it. Midnight managed to sneak up and use her quirk on him, however even that didn't work. Izuku kicked towards Midnight and she managed to block, however was sent flying and crashed into a wall. Ectoplasm created 10 clones which all rushed at Izuku. The clones were immediately destroyed as streams of fire were shot down from the Tower of Flames. Mirio, Tamaki Nijire, can you do it? Aizawa asked. I don't know, Mirio stated. I don't know his physical strength, however Tamaki's tentacles won't help here, they'll just be burned away. Mirio explained. Maybe this works. Nijire asked as she flew up. She charged her quirk and tried binding Izuku. However, it was only for a few seconds as she felt her bind roughly breaking apart. Izuku then shot towards her ready to hit her down, however Tamaki used his tentacles and pulled her away just in time. Mirio ran towards Izuku as he landed and tried punching, however the punch stopped right at the flames. Mirio pulled back and held his wrist. It's like punching an iron wall, he stated while gritting his teeth. Wait, he had a wound, you said, right? Vlad asked. That's right, I saw bandages around him completely red from BLD, and he had a slash on his chest, Bakugo explained. Vlad then ran forward, however Izuku intercepted and appeared in front of him. Izuku punched, but this was caught by All Might who was pushed firmly into the ground with his feet from the blow. Hurry and do what you were planning. All Might stated. Vlad placed his hands on the flaming wall and tried controlling Izuku's BLD to bind him. However, he had closed his wounds off with his flames, and the little BLD that already got out had dried up and wasn't nearly enough to bind him. Izuku then gave another scream as both Vlad and All Might were sent flying. They then saw Izuku falling to his knees in the flames. They saw his body as if it was a shadow, however it still wasn't enough for 𝐬𝐬𝐴. 𝐻𝐻𝐿 charged her quirk again, however this time it was for an energy beam. Bakugo followed her lead and used his explosions, however that wasn't nearly strong enough to break through. "I won't let you get away. Especially after what you did," Izuku shouted in anger as he charged forward. In the blink of an eye he sended Mirio, Tamaki, 𝐻𝐻𝐿, Vlad, 𝐶𝐮𝐬𝐴, ectoplasm and Snipe flying. All that was left was Iida, Eri, Bakugo, All Might, 𝐬𝐬𝐴, Nezu and Recovery Girl. "We have to do something. I doubt his body can hold this much longer after the damage he sustained," Recovery Girl stated. "I'll have to get a bit rough then to create an opening to his body for 𝐬𝐬𝐴," All Might stated. "I'll start with 50%, All Might stated as he charged right at the wall of flames. He gave it a mighty blow, however it didn't even create a crack in the wall of flames, it was still as if he hit an iron wall. "Are you kidding me?" All Might asked as he then used 75%. This time he felt his punch breaking through if even a little, however Izuku wouldn't let it get any further. The moment All Might threw another punch, the flames scorched towards All Might's arm, melting his hero suit away to his shoulder as well as burning his arm. "All Might, your arm," Nezu stated as All Might looked at it shocked. His quirk made him incredibly strong, and to harm his body, someone needed an incredible amount of power. Yet Izuku did it just by making his flames scorch. "It's dangerous to let this go on," All Might stated as he charged 100%, "No wait." Eri shouted as she ran in front of him. "Please move aside, young Eri," All Might stated. "I won't. If I do you'll hurt Izuku," she stated in a serious way. "I don't want to but he leaves us no other choice right now," All Might stated. "Let me try," she stated. "Are you serious? He could kill you," All Might yelled. "Maybe so, but if even a little bit of Izuku is awake in there, then even if he attacks me, it won't be nearly as strong to actually hurt me. Izuku won't hurt me. I just know it," she stated determined. "Are you sure about this?" Nezu asked. "Are we really going to let her go through with this?" 𝐬𝐬𝐴 asked shocked. "Well, we don't have much choice right now," Nezu stated frowning. Eri nodded and turned to Izuku. "All right Izuku, I'm coming closer now," she stated as she slowly walked forward. To everyone's surprise, Izuku just stood there as if he was holding himself back. "Stay away," she heard the real Izuku say. His voice was cracking. She heard sadness, anger, frustration but mostly despair in his voice. She kept walking closer. Eventually he lost control and shot an attack. Eri however kept walking forward determined as the attack then shot the other way before it reached her. "Izuku is fighting whatever took control of him," Nezu stated. The attack was from his anger, but deflecting it was Izuku himself, Nezu explained. Eri then reached the wall of flames. "Izuku, I'm coming through now," she stated as she passed through the flames as if they weren't there. Once she got inside the towering flames, she saw Izuku breathing heavily. His body was trembling even more than his voice was. Tears streamed down his face. "Please stay away. I don't want to hurt you as well," Izuku cried. Eri shook her head, walked closer and hugged him. Izuku cried even more but was now able to calm his flames down. The flames around him slowly lowered itself and became less powerful by the second. Eventually the flames completely died out. All of the teachers had gotten up, however it was definitely a struggle for them since Izuku gave them a really heavy hit. They saw Izuku crying and shaking heavily in Eri's arms until he fell to his knees. "It's all right, we're here for you," she said softly as she held him close. Izuku placed his eyes in her neck while crying and his arms firmly behind her back as he let everything out. Everyone felt bad seeing Izuku like that. Sure they got hurt, but they knew it wasn't Izuku himself that did it. Anger had taken over his body, but to see someone who they knew was extremely powerful being so fragile and broken on the floor. It hurt them terribly but also scared them. All of them had the same question in their head. Just what the hell happened to him? After a long while Izuku finally calmed down a little. He wasn't breathing anymore, however his body was still shaking and he was still crying. Izuku, can you explain what happened? Bakugo and I found you after you collapsed from those intense flames, but we don't know anything from what happened, Eri asked. But right after she did, she felt Izuku tense up and hold her tightly. It's all my fault. Izuku yelled through his tears as this shocked everyone. Izuku, where is Sarah? Bakugo asked. Right as that question came, Izuku pushed Eri away and wanted to run away, however she immediately shot after him and threw her arms around him. Something happened, right? She asked softly. Did she get hurt? Or did you two get separate? Eri asked. It's my fault, damn it. Izuku shouted as he fell to his knees again. What is your fault? Nizu asked as he walked towards Izuku and placed a hand on his shoulder. What happened to you and Sarah? He asked softly. Everyone stood behind Izuku as they were all worried, even the big three. They felt themselves that Izuku was strong, but to give him such sadness and despair worried them and gave them cold sweat. Sarah. She's gone. She's dead and it's my fault. Izuku shouted as he slammed the ground while everyone's eyes widened. What did you say? Bakugo asked, shocked as if he didn't hear right. Cut the CRP. Tell us what really happened. Bakugo shouted as he grabbed Izuku's shirt and pulled him up. She's dead. Sarah is dead and it's my fault. Izuku shouted as he broke again. He didn't even have the strength to stand anymore, he couldn't even move a muscle anymore. Bakugo let go of Izuku and took a few steps back before he fell on his back looking in disbelief. The teachers all knew Sarah, and also how she was as well as the bond she shared with Izuku. Midnight had even tears streaming down her face as she heard. Eri stood up, eyes covered by her hair as she sat down in front of Izuku and pulled him towards her softly while placing his head in her neck and patting his head as she hugged him. Is she really? Aizawa asked. Aizawa. Stop, look at the state he's in, that would tell you that he's telling the truth, Nizu stated as he too felt terrible about it. Izuku, I'm sorry but I have to ask, could you please explain us everything that happened? Nizu asked. Izuku kept silent but then silently nodded. Is it alright if I record it? I can let the police hear it so you won't have to tell it again, Nizu stated as Izuku nodded again. Everyone sat down around Izuku as Nizu grabbed a recorder from his pocket. Luckily I had one with me, could you please explain what happened? Nizu asked as he sat in front of Izuku. Eri sat behind Izuku with her arms around him as he laid against her. He felt really weak, but at this moment he was really weak and fragile. Izuku was broken. Sarah and we decided to surprise our mother by a sudden visit. We thought it would be fun to surprise her like that, and it really was. We laughed a lot and also made jokes. We told her our stories from UA so far, and about the people, Izuku stated very calmly as this actually surprised everyone. My mother wanted to pick something out of the bedroom, however there was a giant explosion. Sarah managed to defend herself. I got pierced by something although I have no idea what, Izuku stated. We noticed my mother dead on the ground. Sarah pulled me away and we found bandages. When we wanted to reach for UA we were surrounded. Sarah grabbed me and flew away. She told me to leave her behind and go get help at UA, but I just couldn't leave her behind there, so I joined the fight, Izuku stated. Everything was going well. We had the upper hand and defeated many villains, however I was losing too much BLD and we wanted to wrap it up. I charged a powerful blast of fire. She covered me, however when she moved out of the way, we got jumped on by another group of villains. I remember the names of a few, Muscular and Dabi. I've heard them in the news recently, Izuku stated. Muscular grabbed Sarah's throat and punched the air out of her as he then swirled her around before throwing her towards my blast. I wanted to stop my blast or chance its path, but I got attacked by two weapons and then a girl cut my chest making me unable to stop the blast. Izuku stated, gritting his teeth. Sarah got hit by the blast. She was first sent flying high up in the air as she then fell to the floor. She told me to run. When spikes shot from the ground and pierced her body. Tears streamed down her face, BLD streamed from her mouth, but she was still smiling at me. Izuku said as tears started streaming again. Overhaul showed up. The crowd of villains got in my sight for a second, However, when I was able to see him again, I only saw a little pool of blood. Sarah was gone. He told me his quirk was disassembling and reassembling. He could destroy and repair things or people however he saw fit. He killed Sarah. Izuku gritted his teeth, clenched his fist, and flames swirled around his body again. Eri held him closer and placed her head against his. Why was she smiling at me? It was my fault if I had listened to her. If I hadn't used that giant fireball, she wouldn't be hit by such a powerful blast, and she would have never died like that. Izuku stated, crying. Bakugo sat with his back towards Izuku and the group, but Izuku could tell it hit him hard. 𝐬𝐬. Eri was crying behind him. 𝐬𝐬. Thank you for explaining, Izuku. I'm really sorry to hear about your losses, 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐴 stated as even he had tears in his eyes. He knew Izuku well. He also knew how powerful he was, and also the bond he had with Sarah, but to lose both Sarah and his mother in the same day, while blaming himself for her death, he could see why Izuku lost control. Why not go back to your dorm room and get some rest? 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐴 asked softly as Izuku nodded. He and Eri both got up. Bakugo got up as well as he walked to Izuku. The three of them walked back while supporting Izuku, who was still too weak to walk on his own. 𝐬𝐬, please come with me. We'll have to inform the others of this as well, 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐴 stated as 𝐬𝐬 nodded. 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐴 looked around and saw Midnight silently with tears streaming down her face from what she heard. 𝐵𝐺𝐼R was sobbing as well as Mirio and Tamaki tried to calm her down. The others all looked sad as well. 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐴 and 𝐬𝐬 then quickly walked after Izuku, Bakugo and Eri. The three entered the dorm first and everyone quickly ran towards them. They had noticed the giant pillar of fire in the city as well as at Yue. Ida also got in together with 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐴 and 𝐬𝐬. Hey guys, what's going on? Kirishima asked. They saw Izuku wounded but also the shape he was in and being supported by Bakugo and Eri. All three of them had their eyes covered by their hair as they walked up the stairs to Izuku's room. What's going on with them? Why does Izuku look so beat up? And where is Sarah? Azui asked. Can you all sit down please? 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐴 asked. Everyone looked at him confused, but they all walked to the common area and sat down on couches and chairs they pulled closer. What I'm about to tell you isn't going to be easy, 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐴 stated. Why so grim? Did someone die or something? Kaminari joked. However, he got a glare from 𝐬𝐬. Wait, he stated as 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐴 nodded. Just. Sarah won't be coming anymore, 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐴 stated as everyone gasped with wide eyes. We just heard news that she's been killed by villains, 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐴 stated as he closed his eyes. Then, Izuku is so beat up. And those pillars of flames, Momo stated as if she wasn't able to find the right words anymore. She got killed right in front of Izuku's eyes. The pillars of fire you all saw in the city, and it was Izuku losing his mind and control, 𝐬𝐬𝐴 stated. My God. Momo stated as all the girls had tears in their eyes. Even all the guys felt broken now. Especially since they knew the bond between the group of four, but mostly because of how Izuku must feel right now. 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐴 then let them hear the conversation he just recorded, and they were all left speechless at the end, mostly because they heard how sad and broken Izuku was, but also the way she was killed, and how Izuku blamed himself for it. Meanwhile, in Izuku's room, Izuku sat on his bed with Eri against him. She had placed her legs over his while laying her head against his. Bakugo sat with his back against the door, knees high up to his face with his arms over his knees and his face buried in his arms. No one saying a word. Sarah might have been Izuku's sister, and even though they would never get the bond with Izuku or Sarah like the two of them had, but Sarah was a sister also to Bakugo and Eri. They were broken as well by the death of their sister, but also by the broken Izuku. Izuku, Eri and Bakugo were sitting in Izuku's room in the dark. Izuku sat on his bed with Eri's legs over his as she clinged to his arm while placing her head against his. Bakugo, however, had walked in the room, locked the door and placed his back against the door as she then slowly glided to the ground. There was a silence. Eri was sobbing. Bakugo had his face in the pits of his elbows as he placed them on his knees, which he had pulled up. Izuku just sat limply staring to the ground. Eri, Bakugo started as he broke the silence. She didn't say anything as she looked at him. That guy overhaul, he knew you, didn't he? And you knew him too, Bakugo stated. Yes, Eri said silently as she tightened her grip around Izuku's arm, but he was too much in a daze to notice. Who or what was he to you? 𝐻𝐿𝐲 asked. He's the man I ran away from. My adoptive father. I meant it when I said my adoptive father was a dangerous man. I didn't become an orphan because I wanted to, but it was better than staying with him, 𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐲 stated, sobbing. So your adoptive old man killed Sarah. How does that make you feel? 𝐻𝐿𝐲 stated, almost blaming it on her. Stop this, it's not 𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐲's fault, she's not to blame for a villain's actions. If you want to blame someone, blame me. She died because of my attack. Izuku suddenly spoke from his daze. I know it not her fault, but it definitely isn't your fault either. It's just I don't know what to think, or say, or do I just don't know, 𝐻𝐿𝐲 stated, almost freaking out. Truth be told, I never thought it was possible for Sarah to get beaten, let alone be killed, 𝐻𝐿𝐲 stated. She was a very strong girl, but she was a sister to all of us, 𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐲 stated. Damn it, I hate that overhaul guy. The next time I see him, I'll kill him. 𝐻𝐿𝐲 shouted as he then jumped up and left. 𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐲 felt guilty. When she met Izuku, she warned him about that man. Overhaul, and now Overhaul took his sister from him. Izuku, I'm so sorry, 𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐲 stated as she began crying. I really am, she stated as she pulled her arms around his head and pulled him closer. Please forgive me. It's all my fault because you know me. You lost your sister, she stated, crying even more. No, he wasn't after you, he was directly after us, he didn't even mention you, Izuku stated from in his daze. This shocked 𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐲. You mean he attacked you too directly? 𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐲 asked as Izuku nodded. He was working under orders from someone named Shigaraki and a boss, Izuku said, emotionless. 𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐲 didn't know what to think or say anymore. She felt so afraid, alone, cold. She felt despair rising up in her own body. Izuku noticed her tensing up and curling herself in a ball next to him. Izuku looked at her and pulled his arm around her. Once he placed his hand around her, he felt her trembling heavily. Izuku pulled her close and slightly activated his quirk to warm her up. Suddenly she started crying a lot, and as a reaction she pushed him on his back as she fell on top of him. She started crying more and more while holding his shirt as if her life depended on it. She had placed her eyes in his chest. Izuku placed his arms around her and started crying as well. Eventually they both fell asleep laying like that. They woke up the next morning when someone knocked on the door. It was Momo. Hey Izuku. Is 𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐲 there with you? Momo asked, but there came no response. We still wanted to go to the pool, just to relax our bodies. We know it might not be the right time right now, but we still wanted to ask if you two wanted to come as well. It might be a nice distraction, Momo stated. 𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐲 then stood up and walked to the door. Izuku still laid on his bed limply staring at the ceiling. 𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐲 opened the door. We'll meet you in a bit in the common area, 𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐲 said to Momo, who looked concerned. She noticed how dark it was in the room. She also noticed Izuku laying there without saying a thing or moving. She also saw 𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐲's swollen eyes from all the crying she did. Alright, well, see you downstairs then, Momo said as cheerful as she could be, hoping it would help. However, 𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐲 just looked away and closed the door. Come on Izuku, you are coming too, 𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐲 stated as she pulled him up. I know you don't want to do a thing, but you really have to leave your room for a bit, 𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐲 stated. I don't want either, honestly. I'm forcing myself. I just feel like I could lay down and cry my life away right now, she stated as she had finally pulled him up. Izuku finally started to cooperate, however he still looked in a daze as if he was on autopilot. 𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐲 felt heartbroken again seeing him like this. She felt so much pain, and sadness and frustration. However, the pain and sadness she felt made the frustration seem like nothing. She grabbed Izuku's swimming stuff and pulled him out of his room, and again he acted as if on autopilot. She then walked to her room and grabbed the bikini she bought when she found out that they wanted to ask for permission to use the pool. Izuku and 𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐲 walked downstairs and everyone was waiting for them. Sadly, 𝐻𝐿𝐲 seemed around the same state Izuku was in. He looked towards the ground almost in a daze. However, just like 𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐲, he just forced himself to get out of his room to try and get some distraction. If it was going to happen was still a question. She noticed in his eyes that 𝐻𝐿𝐲 had cried as well. Hey Izuku, Uraraka stated with a weak smile as she tried to see how he was holding up. However, Izuku didn't even give her a glance. He kept looking towards the ground without saying a thing. Momo and Mina had their hands in front of their mouths. They knew it would hit them hard, but never did they imagine it would be this bad. They walked towards school and even encountered Class 1B. At first Class 1B was cheerful and started a nice conversation. 𝗏𝗏 wanted to join in and make a dumb joke, however they then noticed the state Izuku was in. He still had the bandages with BLD on, and he also still had the shirt on which he was slashed in. They also noticed even 𝗏𝗏 didn't care about them. He had been silent the whole time. But what shocked them most was the silence from Izuku and the emptiness in his eyes. This was enough to even shut 𝗏𝗏 up. "Are you guys going to the pool?" Kendo then asked Momo as she kept looking at Izuku. "Yeah, what about you guys?" Momo asked as she also kept looking at Izuku, then at 𝗏𝗏. "Well, we asked 𝗧𝗜𝗧𝗟𝗘, and they told us you asked first and we had to ask if you would allow us to come. However, seeing them like this," Kendo stated a bit sadly. "Don't worry, please come, it might be a good distraction," Eri stated. Kendo looked at her and noticed Eri had also cried a lot. Eri then walked back to Izuku. She's holding herself strong, she feels the same as Izuku and 𝗏𝗏, however she's forcing herself to keep going also because she feels she has to take care of Izuku, Momo explained. "Just what happened to make them like this?" Kendo asked. "I'll explain at the pool," Momo answered as Kendo nodded. Everyone then walked to the pool. 𝗏𝗏 kept glancing at Izuku, 𝗏𝗏 and Eri. At first he wanted to make fun of them, however he could just feel that something serious happened, otherwise people like them would never be turned into that. He loved to make fun of them, but he wasn't such a bad guy that he would make fun of them if something serious was going on. Everyone changed into their swimming clothes and then walked to the pool. Everyone was already there except for Izuku and 𝗏𝗏. Suddenly 𝗏𝗏 walked out, however his face, which was close to holding a days earlier, had now a face of shock. "What's up 𝗏𝗏?" Kirishima asked. "Izuku." 𝗏𝗏 stated as Izuku then walked out. Everyone gasped as he had a big round scar on his side where he was pierced by something, as well as a slash on the right side of his chest. Eri knew he had wounds, but didn't know that it would leave such bad scars. Everyone shook their head and jumped in the water to distract themselves. 𝗏𝗏 also jumped in, however he was floating on top of the water on his back just staring towards the sky around the edge away from everyone else. Izuku sat on the edge just staring down at the water. His eyes were covered by his hair. Everyone really felt bad when they saw him like that. Eri sat next to him and leaned against him as she also placed her head against his. "So what happened?" "They are a reek," Kendo stated worriedly. "You know Sarah and the bond Izuku had with her, right?" Momo asked as all of Class 1B listened. 𝗧𝗜𝗧𝗟𝗘. "Of course, every first year knows about her and Izuku and the bond they share," Kendo stated. Then it hit her. "Wait, you said had? Don't tell me," Kendo stated in shock. "Yes." "She was killed right in front of Izuku. And gruesomely at that," Momo stated as tears formed in her eyes. Even Class 1B couldn't believe what they had heard. Sarah being killed. To everyone it seemed impossible, yet it really happened. Kendo then slow swam towards him as she jumped out of the water. Most would appreciate the sight as most guys knew she had a very athletic body, yet everyone behaved. Even Mineta behaved because they all saw she went to Izuku. Once there she jumped out and sat on her knees next to him. Eri moved a bit away from Izuku as she knew what Kendo wanted. Kendo then grabbed Izuku and pulled him in a hug. She didn't say anything because she really didn't know what to say, and she didn't want to make it worse. Afterwards she jumped back in the water and Eri laid against him again. Eventually she went inside the water and managed to pull him in as well. Izuku still moved on autopilot, and 𝗏𝗏 was still laying on his back on the water. When Kendo came back, she also had tears in her eyes. Suddenly Aizawa walked up and Ida swam towards him. "So, how are they holding up?" Aizawa asked. "Not so good, Eri is forcing herself to stay with us, but the moment she stops she is the same as 𝗏𝗏, staring off, being quiet. Izuku is the worst off, he doesn't talk and moves as if he's moving on autopilot," Ida explained. "That's really not good," Aizawa stated as he seemed worried. "Well, keep an eye on them, maybe they can get distracted with you guys, we have to find a way for them to move on, if not they could end up getting in danger," Aizawa explained. Ida nodded and went back to the others. After a while it was 5 p.m. and they all had to leave the pool. Once they got back at the dorms, Izuku immediately went to his room and laid on his bed without saying a word and also with eating. For the entire following week, Izuku only got out of his dorm for school. He didn't speak a word even there. At lunch breaks he would sit on a table somewhere in a corner without saying a thing or even eating. Eri usually sat by him with 𝐒𝐿𝐴. They learned that he sometimes managed to speak with Eri, however they were only short responses and all were emotionless. 𝐒𝐿𝐴 has been really silent as well, he hasn't sweared in a week. And even combat-related trainings were doable without 𝐒𝐿𝐴's constant shouting and explosions. Aizawa pulled the three along in every lesson, hoping they would eventually come out of it. Eri tried a few times, however her moves were so sluggish that she almost instantly got defeated. Izuku and 𝐒𝐿𝐴 were even pushed over by the shock from clashing moves as Todoroki trained his flames with Aoyama's belly button laser. Eventually the week and weekend were over. Izuku hadn't eaten or spoken in all that time. 𝐒𝐿𝐴 was starting to come out of it as he finally came out of his room from the weekend and even started eating again. He also gave short replies whenever someone asked him something. So they noticed to start with him. Eri had mostly been with Izuku in his room. She had hugged him every time, and when she looked at him, her heart would break again. She even kissed his cheek a few times, hoping for a response and to show him he cared for her. Now it was Monday again, and it was time for disaster trainings at the USJ. They all arrived at the dome-like building in their hero suits as well. Eri's hero suit was a bit like Izuku's costume gamma, however without the iron soles, and without the gloves and braces, and instead of green, hers was silver. Izuku's hero suit was a bit like 𝐒𝐿𝐴's, however he didn't have the gauntlets. His hands were free as well, however he had some clothing from his wrist to just below his shoulder. Hello guys, my name is 𝗏, and welcome to my facility. Today we'll train on disaster trainings. 𝗏 stated, trying to keep her gaze away from Izuku, who still looked empty. Aizawa, was it really such a smart move to bring him here? 𝗏 asked as the class was gawking at how big the facility was. I had to, I can't just leave him behind like this, and I'm still hoping something triggers him to come back to us, Aizawa stated as 𝗏 nodded. You even brought fake villains. Man, UA is awesome, Kirishima stated as this shocked the teachers. Everyone stay back, those are real villains, Aizawa stated. 𝗏, you protect the children, I'll face them, Aizawa stated as he jumped down. While fighting, 𝐒𝐿𝐴 couldn't hold himself back anymore. He was angry at the villains, especially after what villains did to Sarah, so he blasted himself down there as well and began blasting villains. However, he kept himself wide open as he just flailed around with his explosions. Eri also shot down as she protected his back. Her moves were still sluggish, but she managed to protect his back. Those kids, 𝗏 stated. She gazed at Izuku again. He was still standing there. However, she noticed his hands weren't just limply beside his body anymore. They were still there, but his hands had formed fists. Well, it's a response, it's a start. I'm just not sure if it's a good one, she thought. Class rep, get out of here and get us reinforcements. 𝗏 stated. Ida looked hesitant at first but then nodded and ran outside. Then suddenly 𝗀𝐿𝐴 appeared above as he tried to stop Ida. However, the other classmates immediately moved and he managed to get away. 𝗀𝐿𝐴 disappeared just as fast as he disappeared as he then appeared in the plaza again. I'm sorry, Tamura Shigaraki, one managed to escape and is going to get the pros, 𝗀𝐿𝐴 stated. Well, it wasn't part of the plan. But oh well, we'll just have to leave them some corpses to find then, Tamura stated. Izuku's eyes widened as he heard the name Shigaraki. It was the name that ordered Overhaul to go after him and Sarah. Alright Nomu, you are up, Tamura stated as the Nomu quickly appeared in front of Aizawa. Aizawa tried attacking, however it just grabbed his arm and crushed it. Nomu slammed Aizawa in the ground and then broke his other arm like a twig. 𝐒𝐿𝐴 was enraged by this and charged at the Nomu. The Nomu however grabbed Aizawa's leg and slammed him right into 𝐒𝐿𝐴 as they were both sent flying towards the stairs where they crashed. Alright Nomu, next up is that girl over there. Instead of playing with her like the others, make sure to kill her, Tamura stated. Izuku heard this and saw Eri standing in fear. She was just standing there frozen in fear, then he remembered how he just watched when Sarah died. Izuku ran forward as he placed his foot at the edge of the stairs and launched right at Eri at the same time as the 𝗰𝐽. The 𝗰𝐽 smashed down on her as she stood there, wide eyes, tears in her eyes full of fear. When the fist was about to end it, she closed her eyes waiting for the impact. However, this never came. She actually felt arms around her. When she opened her eyes again, she saw Izuku. Izuku had saved her and his arms held her close. He then landed on his feet and she noticed there was quite a bit of distance between them and the 𝗰𝐽. 13 saw Izuku there and was shocked. She barely saw him move at all. Izuku then appeared on top of the stairs, placed Eri down. He then shot down, grabbed Bakugo and Aizawa and laid them down before then appearing in the plaza again. Izuku however landed right in the middle of the plaza right between the 𝗰𝐽 and Shigaraki with Kurojiiri. Are you Shigaraki? Izuku asked coldly as his eyes were covered by his hair. I am. What of it? Tamura asked. I see, then it's all your fault, Izuku stated. What's my fault? Shigaraki asked, confused as he didn't recognize Izuku for a second, then his eyes widened. It's your fault that 𝗧𝗟𝗘 died. Izuku yelled as flames erupted from his body again. Aizawa opened his eyes and looked downstairs. This is bad, Aizawa stated. You are still conscious? 13 asked. Just barely. I'm glad Izuku saved us, but those flames, it's like when he lost control, Aizawa stated. That's because he heard the name of the person that sent overhaul after them, Eri stated. Izuku's flames kept erupting from his body and even engulfed the plaza like a sea of flames. 𝗰𝐽, you can have some fun with this one before we can kill All Might, Tamura stated. Wrong, no one will die today and I'll make sure of it. Izuku shouted, charging even intenser flames. Suddenly he shot from the towering flames and arrived at the 𝗰𝐽 as he punched it in the chest. The 𝗰𝐽 was sent flying and crashed deep into the stairs covered in a lot of smoke. Too bad, 𝗰𝐽 has the power to absorb all your attacks, and he can also heal his own body, Shigaraki stated. However, the 𝗰𝐽 had the mark from Izuku's fist still in his chest, and it actually took him a while to heal. What's with that insane strength? Shigaraki asked, shocked. Surprised. You messed with me while not even knowing my power. It's true that I lost control earlier, he stated as if answering Aizawa. But this is my full power. This is me when I get serious. You made the biggest mistake you could ever make. Not only did you send villains after me, you even made them kill my mother and 𝗧𝗟𝗘, Izuku stated. Now you'll pay. Izuku shouted as he charged at Shigaraki. However, a warp hole opened out which made the 𝗰𝐽 appear in front of him. Izuku gave him a heavy blow to the gut, however the 𝗰𝐽 stayed in place. He punched Izuku in the face, however instead of being sent flying, Izuku stayed in place as well. His face slowly pushing the fist back as he looked at the 𝗰𝐽. Izuku placed his hand on the 𝗰𝐽's chest and shot his flames right through him as if it was a close-ranged flamethrower. The 𝗰𝐽 weakly stepped back and even fell to his knees. However, the wound wasn't healing. "Enemy full power right now," Shigaraki shouted in fear. The 𝗰𝐽 quickly got up and disappeared. Izuku then also disappeared. Everyone tried to find them, however all they saw, heard and felt were the fierce shockwaves coming from their clashes. Suddenly Izuku stopped the 𝗰𝐽's punch high in the air as he then grabbed the 𝗰𝐽's arm and swung him towards the ground. Izuku placed his hands together in front of him. "Ha Nova Crusher!" he shouted as fireball almost like meteorites shot from his hands at the 𝗰𝐽 which crashed right into him as he bounced off the floor. Izuku then shot down with a flaming drop kick as he reached the 𝗰𝐽. Izuku stepped off of him and took a few steps back. The 𝗰𝐽 got up and wanted to slam down on Izuku, however he was faster and jumped up and kneed the 𝗰𝐽 in the face. "He's overpowering it," 13 asked amazed. "He sure is," Aizawa stated as he forgot his pain when looking. "I've never seen Izuku like this," Eri stated. "Me neither, but now I know why he never went all out to beat 𝗧𝗟𝗘. If he had done so he would have hurt her terribly," Bakugo stated. "It was painful to bring her up though." Ida and the teachers bursted inside. They all ran to the stairs and saw Izuku with intense flames surrounding him walking towards the 𝗰𝐽 which had a hole in his chest. "What's going on? What is that? And is that Izuku?" Midnight asked. "We were attacked by villains. That thing is called a 𝗰𝐽 and was designed to kill All Might." To answer your last question, that is in fact Izuku. He said that this was his true power, his full power. 𝗧𝗓 gave a quick explanation. The 𝗏𝐽 suddenly shot forward towards Izuku as the 𝗏𝐽 managed to grab his head and was about to give Izuku a mighty blow. All Might wanted to shoot down, however as he got ready, an incredible beam of flames shot at the 𝗏𝐽. Once the flame disappeared, there was no trace of the 𝗏𝐽's left arm anymore. Izuku had obliterated its left arm with such ease. They were all shocked by Izuku. "Time to end this," Izuku stated as he held his hand in front of the 𝗏𝐽, which was then surrounded by a sphere of fire. Suddenly they felt the intense power coming from the sphere and it exploded, shooting the 𝗏𝐽 far away from the dome. "No, my 𝗏𝐽! What have you done to my 𝗏𝐽?" Shigaraki shouted. Izuku turned towards Shigaraki with hatred in his eyes. "Don't worry, you'll join him soon enough," Izuku stated as he held his hand up. At first a tiny fireball appeared in front of his hand. Then in the blink of an eye, the fireball intensified. It was now as big as Izuku himself and had crushed the ground. Everyone could feel its power even from a distance away. "All Might!" Nizu yelled. All Might nodded and immediately shot down in front of Izuku. "I know how you feel, young Midoriya, but think about what you are doing right now. If you do this, you'll definitely kill him, but you'll become a villain yourself," All Might stated. "All Might, move," Izuku said coldly as he placed even more power in the blast. "I can't get through to him," All Might thought. Then suddenly he heard 𝗀𝗧𝗟𝗘 move. All Might turned around and saw 𝗀𝗧𝗟𝗘 engulfing Tamura to get away. Then in mere seconds they were gone. Izuku noticed this, his fireball then vanished. Then the flames around him died out. "Damnithite!" Izuku shouted as he slammed down on the ground. The entire plaza broke as flames shot up from the cracks. Everyone was shocked by this. All Might tried gently pulling Izuku up from the floor. He noticed anger in Izuku's face, however that was quickly overtaken by sadness as Izuku cried again. "It's because of him. He sended overhaul after us. It's because of him that she's dead and I let him get away." Izuku shouted as his voice cracked. The students and teachers all got down. Suddenly Azui walked towards him. She stood in front of him with tears in her eyes. She didn't say anything but her usual ribbit as she then walked closer and pulled her arms around him. Eri followed and did the same. Bakugo strangely followed next, as then the other students did as well. They all hugged Izuku. "I saw everything again, how she looked at me. How she died and how I just stood there watching," Izuku stated. "If I hadn't pulled that move back then, she wouldn't have been unable to move by the blast, and she wouldn't have died." Izuku shouted as everyone released him. "Still, even if you saw everything again, this time you moved, and thanks to you, we're all safe. Aizawa is injured, but thanks to you he isn't dead, and thanks to you I'm still alive as well. I was frozen in fear, but you came to save me," Eri stated softly as she then stood in front of him with everyone around them. "You are my hero, you saved my life, and even when you were broken, you still moved to save me and everyone else. You had the courage and the power to break free from the cage you placed yourself in," Eri stated as everyone smiled with tears in their eyes. "Now it's my time to have some power and courage and let you know exactly how I feel. I know this might not be the right time, but I feel like this for so long, and after saw how brave you were, I have to be brave enough to explain my feelings," Eri stated. Then leaned towards him and kissed him softly on the lips as most of the people there were surprised. They were amazed by what she said to him, however didn't expect her to do that. After a few seconds, she pulled away from him and she saw surprised through his tears. "I love you, Izuku, I always have and I always will." It was one day after the USJ incident. Izuku had gotten a little out of his daze. Even though it was short and mostly emotionless or in a sad tone, he responded again, however only to answer questions. The only one he really spoke with out of himself were his childhood friends Belugo and Eri, well mostly Eri since she mostly stayed with him. The day before she had kissed him and told him she loved him. She had expected him to scold her, saying it wasn't the time for that, or even that he would reject her love, however it was quite the opposite. Izuku had accepted her love and he actually told her that he loved her too. After that she had kissed him again with tears in her eyes, and he just kissed back. He had a slight smile, however after remembering what happened to Sarah, his face got back to a sad look again. He even admitted that he still lost control around the end, and that was the reason that the Nomu's arm got blown off, and also the reason such an intense fireball appeared when he aimed his power at Shigaraki. When all the tension of the moment was gone, Izuku had to sit down since he was tired from such a release of power after barely moving for a week. Now, everyone was at school. "Alright kids, I've got another announcement to make," Aizawa stated with his arms in cast. "Next week we'll hold an exam here at UA to see how much you've improved. You'll be fighting the teachers as part of your exam. This won't be just to see how you've improved, this will also show you your weaknesses and hopefully you'll find a way to overcome them," Aizawa explained. "However, due to reasons, we've got a problem with the pairing. Either one person has to take 2 exams, or one has to go solo," Aizawa stated. "I'll do it," Izuku immediately stated. Aizawa looked at him and Izuku kept looking back with a serious face. "Which do you prefer? Solo or 2 exams?" Aizawa asked. "I don't mind either of them," Izuku stated. Aizawa was still looking at Izuku, however at this point everyone was. Izuku certainly is capable, however if we put him together with another student it might become too easy. So far we haven't spotted a weakness about him, and this might be an opportunity to see the extent of the power that he can control," Aizawa thought. "How about solo? It might become too easy for other students if you were to back them up, and with you there they won't be able to face their weaknesses," Aizawa stated. "Sure," Izuku said in his emotionless tone again as he sat back down. Afterwards was lunch break. "So Izuku, how are you feeling?" Kirishima asked. "Doing better," Izuku stated as he slowly ate his food. Izuku still didn't feel like eating, but Eri could be scary in her own way and she forced him to start eating again, and so he did. Eri softly smiled while looking at him, then when everyone was done eating, she just placed her head against his. This brought a slight smile to Izuku's face. He already knew he felt something for her, however he never knew what it was until her life was on the line, and especially after she kissed him. The kiss was an amazing feeling for him. It was filled with love and he swore he felt his body tingle because of it. Eri had decided that she would sleep in his room with him since he had to remember everything. He agreed to this, but he told her she could use the bed and he would sleep on the couch that was in his room. She however didn't want to hear any such things and just dragged him into bed with her. She snuggled up to him with a slight smile on her face. Izuku was a bit taken aback by it. Was Eri always like this? Or was it because she finally told him how she felt about him? He didn't mind though, he loved her too and was glad she was with him. He felt alone since his sister died, he was in a daze, on autopilot, his mind completely sealed off from everything and everyone. His body even through his flames was ice cold. And no matter how bright his flames were, he could never get out of the darkness he fell into. However, Eri managed to break through that. She stayed around him no matter what, and when she was in danger, his mind came back to him. When she kissed him, the darkness slowly made way for a blinding light. The light that was Eri. Even now at school she stayed close to him, not because she had to or because he was too depressed. She stayed by his side because she wanted to stay by him because she loved having him around. Bakugo slowly got to his senses again as well, although he was a lot calmer and didn't swear nearly as much. However, from time to time, even he had a smile on his face. "So, Izuku, you sure you will be alright?" Azui asked. It was the first time she talked to him after the USJ. She had mostly been embarrassed and avoided him because she suddenly hugged him after the USJ. Everyone eventually hugged him, but the fact that she started it, and also that Izuku and Eri loved each other made her feel awkward. "Yeah, I think I can handle a one-on-one with a teacher even if they are pros," Izuku answered. "But you don't even know who you'll be facing," Momo stated. "Doesn't matter, I just have to win. I have to get stronger anyway," Izuku answered her. After school, Izuku went to train together with Todoroki. Todoroki had asked Izuku for help on training with his flames, and it would help Izuku getting used to using his quirk again. Eri had followed them and was sitting in a tree. She looked at Izuku with a smile on her face and a dreaming look in her eyes. "I really have fallen hard for him," she thought, which made her chuckle. Izuku had already noticed she was there too, however he didn't mind having her around. At first Todoroki showed what he was able to do. He could even use both his powers to a certain extent, however this wasn't much. also because he couldn't control his flames very well. Todoroki then concentrated on training his flames to be able to control more and more power with it. Izuku, however, used his usual training. Todoroki looked closely at Izuku and how he used his flames, and even learned to aim better and to keep his flames smaller. He couldn't do nearly as much as Izuku with his flames, but it still helped. "Watch this," Izuku said silently as he disappeared. Eri was shocked by his sudden disappearance and was looking around if she could spot him. Todoroki saw Izuku appear underneath a tree branch as he placed a hot flame close to the branch. Eventually he heard and saw Eri in the tree as Izuku apparently had placed a flame under her butt. "Psycho!" she shouted as she launched at him. Izuku just appeared back next to Todoroki as they saw Eri with an embarrassed look looking at them. After a while they thought it would be enough for today's training and went to the dorms. Izuku, however, had other plans instead of staying inside. After dinner he walked outside without saying anything. Everyone thought he just needed some time alone, so they just let him be. Aizawa had spotted Izuku as Izuku was heading out of UA. He followed him and saw Izuku walking to a street. It still had some cracks here and there on the street and on the sidewalks. Izuku, however, stopped on the middle of the road and just looked around before then staring forward. Maybe this is where it all happened. So I think he's trying to accept what happened, and he's coming here to try and move on, Aizawa thought. After a while Izuku walked off again, however this time it wasn't to UA. Where could he be heading? Aizawa stated silently to himself. Probably to the apartment they lived at. Eri suddenly stated from behind Aizawa, who was surprised by her. However, it wasn't just Eri there, Bakugo was also there, looking at Izuku. They followed him some more as he indeed arrived at the apartment where he had been living at for years. Eri and Bakugo just walked towards the door and also got inside. Izuku wasn't far inside. He only stood halfway the hallway. Everything was still the same from when he and Sarah had left in a hurry to get to safety. The only difference now from then was that his mother's body was moved away. Izuku then walked towards the dining table. The thing he was looking for was still there. He grabbed it and looked at it intently. Bakugo and Eri walked up to him and saw what he was holding. Aizawa got a bit curious, but also worried, so he walked in as well. Once he stood by them, he noticed Izuku was holding a picture. It was the picture that was made at the sports festival. Aizawa, Eri and Bakugo looked at Izuku and they all saw Izuku looking at the picture silently, tears heavily streaming down his face. "Are you alright?" Eri asked as she placed her arm and hand on his back. Bakugo placed his hand on Izuku's shoulders as suddenly. Izuku placed his arms around their necks and pulled them close to him. "Even if she's not here with us anymore, we still are and will always be a family," Izuku suddenly stated with tears still streaming down. Eri had placed her right hand on his chest and her left on his back as she hugged him like that. Bakugo just accepted the moment. Aizawa smiled at them. After a while they headed back to UA. It was already late, so they all went to bed. Eri, however, casually walked with Izuku to his room. "Eri, what are you doing?" Izuku asked. "Oh, sorry, ever since what happened, I've been sleeping in your room, and I kind of got used to it. I sleep really good next to you," Eri stated, blushing a little. "Well, as long as we don't hear any complaints from Aizawa that it isn't allowed, I'm fine with it," Izuku stated as she smiled at him and kissed him on the lips. Izuku accepted the kiss and kissed her back. The following days passed quickly as Izuku trained a few days with Todoroki and other days just stayed in the common area with the others. Now it was finally timed for the exam. Everyone so far had passed. However, they made the exam for Bakugo and Eri harder as they were paired together and they knew how capable they were, but in the end they passes. Now it was time for Izuku's exam. However, no one expected his opponent to be All Might, the symbol of peace and the #1 hero of Japan. What Izuku has to face All Might? Mina shouts, shocked. Yep, Izuku is stronger than the other teachers. When he lost control and fought against the teachers, he easily blasted most away. Now he's more in control, and the only one that can really test him is All Might, Aizawa explained. "Ready, go." They heard as they saw All Might shooting off an air pressure punch. Izuku's eyes started to glow, and flames formed a barrier to block the air pressure. Immediately after, All Might launched at Izuku and broke through the flaming barrier. However, Izuku was gone. Suddenly streams of fire shot from the ground towards All Might, who was barely able to dodge. Izuku then appeared again by trying a burning spinning kick, however this was blocked by All Might's arm. "What's wrong, young Midoriya? You used a lot more power days ago, why are you holding back?" All Might asked, however Izuku didn't respond. Izuku just disappeared as he tried punching All Might from the back, however this was dodged. Izuku then disappeared again and tried kneeing All Might from above, this was deflected by an air pressure. All Might went on the offensive as he attacked, however every lunge he gave, Izuku just disappeared and appeared again besides his fist or a few steps back. Izuku suddenly took a big jump back as he held out his hand as he shot a rapid fire of flaming arrows. All Might deflected most of them and dodged the others. He wanted to go on the offensive, however he noticed spears of fire appearing from the ground around him, as well as tridents at chest height for All Might. However, what shocked him most were dozens of arrows in the sky. All of the flaming weapons were aimed at All Might. Incredible, how does he control all of those attacks at once? Momo asked, amazed as she saw it. Izuku always had amazing control of his flames, it was something Sarah could never beat, although Izuku was ahead of her in power as well, he just never went all out against her in fear to hurt her. She did beat him in speed though, Eri explained. But he could control even more than this, she stated with a smile. Man, I have fallen for quite an ambush of attacks, haven't I? All Might stated as he was obviously sweating from it. Izuku swiped his arms together as all of the moves shot at All Might. Right as all his moves crashed into All Might, he placed his hands in front of him and shot his Nova Crusher. An even bigger explosion emerged from it and it got quiet in the streets of the fake city. After a while All Might appeared from the smoke, he had defended himself from all the attacks, but he was obviously damaged. So that's why you weren't using your real power, you were planning on such an attack, All Might stated. Actually you are wrong, I haven't used my quirk in actual combat in some time, apart from the USJ that is, I wanted my body to get used to combat with my quirk again, and I wanted to see if tactics like that could even work, Izuku explained. It seems it does work, but doesn't do enough damage, he added in. So now, it's time to use some of my real power, he stated as flames engulfed him. All Might charged 80% and threw a punch at Izuku, he however countered with his own punch and pushed All Might's fist back. They both gave a barrage of punches, however each of those punches pushing All Might back more and more as well as bringing him off balance more and more until Izuku gave him a low sweep and kicked All Might's legs from underneath him. Izuku then turned back around to face All Might, hands and feet on the ground he bursted towards All Might kneeing him in the stomach before slamming him into the ground. Everyone was amazed by Izuku's power. This boy, he's overpowering me like this at 80%. All Might thought as he began coughing up blood before falling to his knees having to stop the match. All Might was quickly brought to Recovery Girl, and it seemed Izuku had placed a heavy blow on All Might's existing wound. The blow fell so bad that All Might was immediately at his limit. Afterwards, Aizawa explained that this was also a test to see who would be ready for the license exam which would be held in a few days and everyone passed the test. They trained more until the license exam. Todoroki managed to get a good grasp on his flames, Izuku and Eri started training together. She tried to use the same training, and eventually she gained more control of the wind. Bakugo created a new move called AP Shot and it was a concentrated explosion from his palm. Everyone managed to create some moves and also managed to gain more control of their quirk, until it was finally time for the license exam. Everyone sat on the bus as Izuku and Eri sat in the back. He was looking outside. However, it seemed like he was worried. "Don't start getting nervous now, sweetie," she silently stated as she leaned against him as she wrapped her arms around his arm and held his hand with their fingers intertwined. "Don't worry, I'm good, I was just thinking about what they would make us do," Izuku stated. "Well, I'm sure it's nothing you can't handle," she stated. Izuku looked at her and this time it was him kissing her. She was surprised by it but she loved it. The feelings of his lips on hers. She still couldn't get used to it and felt his warmth flowing into her just from their kiss. The rest of the class smiled at how Izuku was slowly opening up again. They arrived at the place where the license exam would be held. Once they got out they saw 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 also walking in. They also noticed someone from 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 as the teacher from there was teasing 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐬𝐽. However, one of their students, 𝗫𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, was looking at Izuku intently. Izuku noticed something in his eyes, yet it wasn't something bad. It was almost as if he knew something about Izuku. Everyone quickly went inside, put their hero suits on and got ready in the waiting room. It was then explained that the first part would be basically running around with 3 balls and 3 targets. You have to get 2 people. If you tag them out, you'll go through and only the first 100 pass on to the next round. At first everyone was a bit hesitant at first, but eventually everyone got into it. They all made it through as the last of the members of their school made it in the last few spots. I'm just going to leave the first part almost like the anime. However, instead of Izuku running around with 𝗧𝗓𝗏 and 𝗧𝗏, Eri was their 𝗀𝗧𝗏. I'm leaving it like this because I honestly can't think of anything to make this part interesting. Sorry guys. Then it was time for the next round. It was a rescue mission. Everyone ran into the city. Class 1A stayed together. Suddenly Jiraiya found people underneath a collapsed building. Shoji used his multi-arms to create a mouth, ear and eye to look and talk with the wounded. They are stuck and both have a broken leg. They don't have any major injury but can't walk on their own, Shoji stated. Izuku and Eri then combined their powers as Eri used her wind to slowly push the rubble up. Izuku used his flames to push it together with her. Izuku then ran inside while holding his flames up and quickly got them out from under there. Afterwards, Izuku and Eri ran towards the first aid station, both with an injured person. Someone who was examining the wounded ran up to them as they explained the wounds they had when suddenly there was a loud explosion and the wall broke down. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 came out from the wall with an enormous army of henchmen. Tell me, wannabe heroes, what will you do when you face the unknown? What will you do when you'll face an enemy while having to protect others? Will you rescue or will you fight? Will you protect or run away? 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 asked as then they all charged for the first aid station. Izuku immediately rushed towards them. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 ran at the front and the henchmen followed him. Izuku was the only one charging at them. However, he was charging straight for 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. His eyes started to glow and his body was followed by flames as he got even faster. Izuku and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 were quickly closing in on each other. Then they reached each other. However, instead of reacting, they headbutt each other as Izuku then slapped the flames that followed him forward as a wall of fire which blew all the henchmen away. Izuku and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 both shot away from the force of the headbutt. Even though Izuku used his flames to make him faster and stronger, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 headbutt with equal force as he had a really hard head. Izuku was pushed back quite a bit, but then again so did 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 and the henchmen. You're not alone. Shindo suddenly shouted as he then stopped next to Izuku. He placed his hands on the ground and began hammering away at the henchmen with his quirk. Eri also appeared next to Izuku. The 3 of us will create a line to hold them back. The first aid station is retreating somewhere safe, Eri explained. Alright, let's do this, Izuku stated. Shindo used his quirk again to bring the henchmen off balance. However, some jumped and shot a cement gun at the 3 that created the line. Eri used her wind and blew the cement away. Izuku then placed his hands on the ground as a giant wall of flames surrounded 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. However, as fast as the wall appeared, it disappeared as well, but not without leaving 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 a present. Arrows, spears and tridents of flames were all around 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. His eyes widened, as well as the henchmen's eyes and Shindo's eyes. Izuku was controlling so much weapons of flames with ease. Not bad, I have to admit, your control is astounding, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 stated. But this won't get you close to beating me. He shouted as he used intense supersonic waves and destroyed all the flaming weapons that surrounded him as they all exploded. Shindo used his quirk again. However, Izuku added a wave of fire to it as this blew the henchmen back even further. Izuku was gritting his teeth as he felt his power pushing, wanting to come out. No, I lost control because of my anger before. I can't let that happen again. I have to be able to control it, Izuku thought. Izuku then suddenly stood up. Orcas are weak to fire and heat, right? Izuku asked. Yeah, but what does that have to do with it? Shindo asked. Eri, use your wind on my move, Izuku stated as she nodded determined. Heat wave. Izuku stated as heat shot from his hand towards 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. Eri used her intense wind and surrounded 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 with it. However, suddenly one of the henchmen shot water from his hands on 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. It's a weakness, alright, but with my henchmen here, 𝗧𝗜𝗨, it doesn't really matter. They can extinguish every flame, and they can give me more water, 𝗧𝗜𝗨, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 stated. Want to put that to the test? Izuku shouted towards him. Izuku then whispered his plan in Eri's ear, who looked surprised. Raging hurricane. Eri shouted as an intense tornado surrounded 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. Raging inferno. Izuku shouted afterwards as really intense flames entered the tornado. What are you doing? His henchmen can extinguish the flames, 𝗧𝗫𝗧𝗟𝗘 stated. He then saw the henchman shooting water, however it wasn't reaching the flames. What's going on? 𝗧𝗫𝗧𝗟𝗘 asked, surprised. By mixing our fire and wind, we can overcome that weakness. My flames alone might be dealt with easily because of the water, and Eri's wind might be blown apart easily by the sonic waves, Izuku stated. But by mixing our attacks we destroy both those weaknesses. By adding my flames to the tornado won't get destroyed that easily. And by adding Eri's wind to my flames, it can blow away the water before it reaches my flames, Izuku explained. You guys really are amazing, 𝗧𝗫𝗧𝗟𝗘 stated. But then again, I knew you were from then, 𝗧𝗫𝗧𝗟𝗘 added silently. What do you know about me? Izuku asked as he knew that 𝗧𝗫𝗧𝗟𝗘 knew something about him. I saw what happened to you and that girl, 𝗧𝗫𝗧𝗟𝗘 stated as Izuku's eyes widened for a little. My parents live in that street, and we heard all the commotion. I looked out of the window and saw everything happen. I was too frozen in fear to even more, and by the time I could move, I saw Eri and a spiky-haired blonde guy take you away, 𝗧𝗫𝗧𝗟𝗘 explained. Izuku didn't respond to that. Instead he placed his hand more firmly on the ground as strings of flames shot from the ground towards the henchman. Eri then charged forward and started to attack from close range. 𝗧𝗫𝗧𝗟𝗘 used his quirk to crack the ground again and launch them up. Izuku's flame covered Eri's back, and Eri herself was using her wind to move at incredible speed, knocking all the villains out. Then Izuku heard 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. I have to admit, this combination is intense. Any normal villain would give up on the spot, but what do you do if this doesn't work? You'll always have to plan your next move, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 stated as he used extremely powerful sonic waves to destroy the tornado which left him breathing. However, once the tornado disappeared, he noticed burning pillars surrounding him. Game over, Izuku stated as he held his hand towards 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, whose eyes widened. Izuku clenched his hand into a fist. Burning slash. Izuku shouted as the pillars turned into slashes which shot at incredible speed at 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. It exploded on impact, and once the smoke cleared, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 was unconscious on the ground. This made the henchmen give up, making the students the winners. Everyone was asked to come to the middle of the arena as all the names of the students that passed would be displayed. Once everyone was there, a giant hologram opened, showing all the names of everyone that passed, and they noticed all of UA, 𝗀𝐻𝑒𝑏utsu and Shiketsu passed. There were only 2 or 3 dropouts from another school. Everyone was cheering as Izuku slightly smiled and looked towards the sky. However, once he did, he saw something on the roof. His eyes widened when he saw it, as he couldn't believe his eyes. He wiped through his eyes, but when he opened his eyes again, it was gone. He shrugged it off. However, Izuku did feel sad again for some reason. On their way back to UA, Aizawa had to disrupt the peace again with another announcement. Now that you've all got your licenses, we can start working for real. The summer vacation will be here soon, but instead of vacation I want you all to join a training camp to train your quirks and power up for real, Aizawa stated seriously as everyone then cheered. Eri noticed a change in Izuku. Something was off, she could feel it. She hugged him and he placed an arm around her. He smiled at her and kissed her head. You know, I'm a lucky guy to have an amazing girlfriend like you, he stated, making her blush. He looked back outside. A training camp to power up our quirks, huh? It's time for me to power up 𝗀𝗚𝗨. I won't let anything like that happen ever again, Izuku thought as he looked outside with a serious face as Eri snuggled up to him, still blushing from the compliment. Week has passed, and the summer vacation was about to start. However, everyone noticed Izuku has been different since the license exam. He became more distant, and no one knew why. Eri noticed it too, and she tried getting it out of him, even with force once. However, he didn't tell her. Eventually they all just had to accept it. UT were still thinking on how they could help him. Izuku and Todoroki still trained daily, and Todoroki even gained more control in both his quirks, and he could control the power of his flames better. Izuku and Eri were still close together, and Izuku tried hiding what was bothering him around her. He thought it worked, however she noticed he was faking that part, but the moments he hugged her, the moments he kissed her or placed his head against hers, even just grabbing her hand, she felt his love for her, and she knew there is no way he could fake such a thing. Once, however, on a day, everyone felt tremors through UA. No one knew what it was. Even the teachers felt it, as well as the older students. Everyone was wondering what it was. Eventually the teachers walked around UA as Aizawa and 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿 together with Eri found the reason. Izuku had been charging a lot of energy, trees were destroyed, the ground was filled with craters. However, Izuku was breathing heavily, sweat streamed down from his face, but his face looked troubled. Eventually he gritted his teeth and released more energy with a loud growl. What could have happened to make him like this? Aizawa asked silently. I don't know, he's been different since the license exam, he won't tell any of us, but now he's even like this. I'm sure something happened or that he saw something, but what? Eri asked worriedly. I'll try it this time, 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿 stated. He walked towards Izuku and Izuku immediately noticed him. Hello Izuku, is everything alright? You look troubled, 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿 stated softly with his smile. Hello 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿 sir, I'm just training, that's all, Izuku stated as he looked away. However, before looking away, 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿 saw something in his eyes and he just couldn't place his finger on what it was. Is something bothering you? 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿 asked. No sir, just training, but I have to go now. Sorry, Izuku said as he just walked off. 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿 looked with a concerned frown as Izuku left. Aizawa and Eri walked next to him. Something is definitely off, he can't even look at me, and when he looked away I saw something but can't really say what it was, 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿 stated. They all stood in silence before Aizawa and 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿 walked back to the school. Eri walked back to the dorm. Once there she saw Izuku walking downstairs with a towel as he went to the bathroom to take a shower. After a while he came out and Eri stood against a wall close by waiting for him. However, when she saw him, her face turned a bright red. All he was wearing was a towel around his body. Oh hey Eri, everything alright? Izuku asked softly while not knowing he was the reason she was bright red. You, she started. Izuku looked curiously. Eventually the other girls got inside as well and saw Izuku standing there in nothing but a towel. All of them were staring with wide eyes at Izuku. My god, Mina suddenly stated, taking Izuku's attention. Why is everyone staring at me with a red face? Izuku asked. Well, everyone can see your body since you only wear a towel, Eri suddenly said form behind him. Izuku looked down and she was right. He was so lost in thought that he forgot about it. Is that a bad thing? He asked. If you want them to jump you then no, but if you don't put clothes on I think you'll melt their brain and they will jump you, Eri stated. Or is that maybe something you want? Eri teased. Not really, Izuku stated as he walked towards Eri. Only if you do it, he whispered teasingly in her ear before kissing her cheek and walking off. Eri achieved a new LVL of red and almost fainted. Alright, so since no one is saying it, Mina stated. He has such a hot body, she added in as everyone including Eri nodded. Sorry girls, he's mine, Eri stated proudly, still blushing madly. True, but we can still give him a hug and feel his body, Mina teased as she ran upstairs. Wait for me. Uraraka shouted as Azui also followed. Don't you dare. Eri shouted as she ran after them. Once upstairs, Izuku luckily had locked his room. No fun. Mina stated with a pout as Momo also got upstairs. First giving everyone a show, showing off his body like that and then locking us out. Mina stated. Seems someone is thirsty, Azui just stated as Mina's pink face turned red before quickly walking off as everyone started laughing. They all ordered dinner later on the day and went to bed early since the next morning would be the start of the vacation, as well as the trainings camp. They all got up early as the bus was already waiting for them. Eri woke up next to Izuku again. She managed to sleep next to him without any problems. They however didn't know if it was because of what had happened, or if the teachers just didn't know yet, or maybe because they know each other from childhood. Still they didn't care, They were allowed to sleep together and that was good enough for them. They loved waking up next to each other. Everyone got on the bus, but since Eri was still tired, she leaned against Izuku and fell asleep again. So what kind of training do you think we'll get? Kaminari asked Jairu, who sat next to him. Knowing Aizawa, it'll be pure hell, Izuku stated from behind them. Kaminari's face became pale, however everyone knew Izuku would be right about that. After 2 hours they stopped at a cliff. Everyone thought it was just for stretching until a car drove towards them and stopped. Once there, 2 women got out of the car. They were 𝐿𝐴𝐴 and Pixie Bob from the Wild Pussycats. Good morning everyone, how was the ride here? 𝐿𝐴𝐴 asked. Good morning, everyone answered. The ride wasn't so bad. Izuku was the only one that answered the question, bringing a smile on 𝐿𝐴𝐴's face. However, when she looked at the person that answered her question, she felt a bit of worry inside of her. The same was for Pixie Bob. They saw something in his eyes that worried them. Not that they thought that he was dangerous or anything, he was only dangerous to villains. The thing that worried them was that Izuku was holding something in while trying to hide it. The others didn't really notice that from Izuku, only those very close and the teachers which had a lot of experience with multiple faces and feelings knew. They noticed Eri looking with a worried frown towards him once in a while too, and they knew that she also knew something was up. Good morning 𝐿𝐴𝐴, Aizawa then spoke up. Alright class, these women are 𝐿𝐴𝐴 and Pixie Bob from the Wild Pussycats. They will be helping and supervising in your training, and will be allowed to use their private ground, Aizawa explained. The entire forest you can see here is our private ground, and if you look closely, there in the middle is an open spot. That's where our camp is, 𝐿𝐴𝐴 explained. You'll have to get through the forest from here to earn your dinner for today, but you'll have to fight through monsters created by Pixie Bob, 𝐿𝐴𝐴 stated. Izuku suddenly walked away from the group and stood on the edge of the cliff. He saw a dangerous monster already. They aren't just animals or monsters, they are created from Pixie Bob's quirk, so animal logic doesn't apply, 𝐿𝐴𝐴 stated as she kept looking at Izuku. However, she was cut off as Izuku's body was slowly being covered in flames. He then jumped off the edge, one arm pulled back ready to strike. They heard a loud growl like shout as then a loud crash was heard and a big flame shot up. Pixie Bob had a warning in her glasses saying high power reading. 𝐿𝐴𝐴 walked towards the edge and saw him standing there, however he was standing at the bottom of a crater he himself created. Izuku slowly walked out, however when he did he was surrounded by the monsters. Everyone else walked towards the edge and were shocked by the crater. When they saw Izuku surrounded they wanted to help him. However, Izuku released a shockwave of flames around him which destroyed the monsters easily. He's doing it with such ease, Pixie Bob stated surprised. Izuku slowly walked through the forest and everyone else quickly joined him. They would rather stay together than going separately. Aizawa, 𝐿𝐴𝐴 suddenly spoke up when everyone was in the forest. She then saw towering wind, big explosions but also flames here and there. What is it? Aizawa asked. That kid with the flames, what is his story? 𝐿𝐴𝐴 asked. What's this? You interested in that boy? Pixie Bob teased with a grin, however 𝐿𝐴𝐴 looked serious but worried. Izuku Midoriya, he together with the girl that gave him worried glances, Eri and the boy with blonde spiky hair, Bakugo and his sister joined UA together, they've known each other for years, Aizawa started. Wait, you named 3 but there were 4, where is his sister? Pixie Bob asked surprised but curious. She was killed right in front of his eyes, Aizawa spoke as their eyes widened. In the first week, he and his sister went to see their mother, but they were attacked. Their mother died by the first attack. However, from what I heard from Izuku as well as eyewitnesses, they were extremely outnumbered. Izuku was wounded as well, Aizawa explained. They were fighting back, and at first it looked good. However, if it continued they would wear themselves out. Izuku decided it would be best to use a big blast to thin out their numbers in a big blast, Aizawa stated as he clenched his fists. From what I heard, multiple warp gates opened up. Under the name of Shigaraki, they managed to get Izuku and 𝐬𝐴𝐵 by surprise. They threw 𝐬𝐴𝐵 in front of his attack and 3 of them had a cheap shot at Izuku which took him away just long enough for 𝐬𝐴𝐵 to crash in the attack which immobilized her. However, Overhaul was the leader of that attack, Aizawa stated as their eyes widened. Izuku said he saw his sister laying on the ground. She told him to get away to safety and live on for her when spikes impaled her through the ground. Even when she was dying, she told him to get away. Overhaul had walked up to her, but his vision towards them got blocked. He opened a path to them himself, but she was gone, and all that was left was a small pool of blood, Izuku explained. He blamed himself for her death. If he hadn't used that attack, she wouldn't have been immobilized and she wouldn't be dead now, Izuku explained. That's horrible, 𝗫𝐬𝐴 stated. When he was brought back, he even lost control of his quirk. He took down almost all of our teachers in one hit and even wounded All Might, Izuku explained. You know about the USJ attack, I guess, so no explaining that now, Izuku stated as they nodded. Seems something is still bothering him, 𝗫𝐬𝐴 stated as she looked towards the flashing moves above the trees. So you noticed it, Oswell? Izuku asked as both of them nodded. Izuku, 𝗫𝐬𝐴 and Pixie Bob made their way back to camp. When they arrived there, it wasn't much longer before Class 1A arrived at the camp. Most of them were exhausted. Eri and Bakugo were breathing, but what shocked them most was that Izuku didn't seem any different from when he jumped down. He didn't have a scratch, he didn't even seem tired at all. This kid, just how powerful is he, and how much stronger will he get, Izuku thought. Ragdoll and Tiger came outside Oswell and were introduced to the class. However, they were also surprised that Izuku was the only one not out of breath without a scratch. I see you made it here in one piece. Impressive little kittens, Tiger stated. And what about you? You seem like you did nothing, Tiger stated towards Izuku. Don't compare him to those extras over there. Compared to most people, Izuku is a monster, Bakugo stated as he regained his breath. Don't worry, Tiger. We saw him fighting a lot of monsters ourselves. I think Bakugo is right, 𝗫𝐬𝐴 stated. Heh, I like him already, Tiger stated with a grin. 𝗫𝐬𝐴 showed them the way to the hot spring so they could take a nice warm bath to relax. Afterwards, she and the other pussycats went to prepare dinner. Mineta, however, wanted to destroy the piece and tried climbing a wall. Izuku, however, slammed him in the wall with his flames and just walked off irritated. He dried himself off, put on his clothes and walked outside. 𝗫𝐬𝐴 noticed this and said to the others that she would be right back. They noticed her go after Izuku and figured something was going on with Izuku and she wanted to help him, so they just shrugged it off. Izuku then reached a small cliff inside the forest which looked over it. It wasn't nearly as high as the cliff where they started though. He sat down at the edge and just watched towards the sky. You don't have to follow me. If you want to ask me something you can just ask, Izuku stated as 𝗫𝐬𝐴 felt caught. She walked up to him, a bit red from embarrassment. Is it all right if I sit next to you? She asked as Izuku just nodded without looking. She walked towards him and sat next to him. May I ask you something? She asked as he nodded again. What was your sister like? She asked. Izuku's eyes slightly widened before sighing. Guess Izuku told you the story then, Izuku stated as he got up and wanted to walk away. She grabbed his arm and stopped him. Please come just sit here and talk with me for a bit. I'm just curious how she was, 𝗫𝐬𝐴 stated. I don't want to bring it up every time. I have enough problems as it is, Izuku stated, pulling away from her grip. I lost my cousin to a villain. It might not be my sister, but we were really close, she suddenly stated as Izuku stopped. I might not know how deep your bond was with your sister, but I do know the pain of losing someone dear to you, she quickly added. Izuku turned around, tears in his eyes. Will it ever stop hurting like this? He asked, his voice cracking and tears streaming down. She stood up and gave him a hug. I can't say that it will. You'll learn to accept it, which will make it hurt less. But the pain will stay, she stated softly. Afterwards the two sat back down. It was silent for a while, tears still streaming down Izuku's face. She felt bad for pulling that out of him. She didn't know what to say now and didn't want to make him feel worse. My sister was always very kind, Izuku suddenly stated as he took a deep breath in and out. We were twins. We always competed to see who was better. She knew I was stronger, but she always won, Izuku stated with a slight smile. I had more power than her, but I'd have to be serious against her. I didn't want that because of the risk to hurt her, so she always won. She did pass me in speed, but I beat her again in control. That way we kept competing and got extremely powerful, he stated. Most people would mistake us for lovers, but that's because we are really close. She sometimes cling to me, even in public. She hugged me whenever she wanted and also kisses my cheek or head sometimes. Normally that would embarrass people, but I didn't mind. She was so kind and sweet. She was really amazing. I also didn't mind because our bond was stronger than anything else, but I guess that's also because of being around each other for so long, Izuku explained. 𝗫𝐬𝐸 smiled after hearing that. I miss her so much. If I hadn't used that blast. Don't blame yourself like that, she quickly said. Your strategy might have worked, it's just that they played dirty, but pulling sneak shots and throwing her at your attack, then attacking you before you could redirect it, 𝗫𝐬𝐸 stated. It might have been your attack that immobilized her, but it isn't because of you that she died, it's the villain's fault, 𝗫𝐬𝐸 spoke up. Izuku just looked down. She pulled him closer so he leaned against her as she placed an arm around him. Sorry, it might be inappropriate of me to do this, but you just seem like you need it, and honestly after hearing all that and remembering my own cousin, I do too, she stated. It's alright, she did this too, Izuku stated. I'm sure Eri wouldn't mind 𝐴𝐴. She would have done the same as you, Izuku stated with a slight smile. Sometimes it's hard to talk about this to others since they don't know what it feels like. They just say everything will be alright, but they have no idea how it feels, which makes it so hard to talk about, 𝗫𝐬𝐸 stated as Izuku nodded. Then how about we just stay in contact? If you ever need to talk, we can talk, Izuku stated. You sure you want to stay in contact with an old lady like me? 𝗫𝐬𝐸 said jokingly. You aren't that old though, even though you are quite a bit older than me. Still we'll eventually be fellow heroes and we can always just be friends. Even heroes need someone they can lean on and talk to, Izuku stated. Can't argue with that, she stated with a smile. Well, shall we get back before the others get worried? 𝗫𝐬𝐸 asked. Sure, but first, Izuku stated. Eri, you can come out 𝐴𝐴, you know. I know you've been watching, he stated, making 𝗫𝐬𝐸 look surprised. Eri then flew up from a tree close to them and landed next to Izuku. She had her arms behind her, eyes filled with tears, but also red from embarrassment and a blush by being caught like that. I'm sorry, I was just worried about you, she stated. It's alright, I'm not angry, Izuku stated. Izuku got up and pulled her in a hug, which she immediately returned as her tears started to stream. 𝐴𝐴. Sorry for being so strange for the past week. After the license exam I thought I saw her again, but she's gone. I guess my mind just couldn't accept it and created her whenever I missed her a lot, Izuku explained. It's alright, we know you are sad and miss her. I'm just sorry I can't help you with it, she stated. You kids come here, 𝗫𝐬𝐸 stated as she pulled both in a hug. Now let's get back quickly, she stated. Otherwise there won't be any dinner left for us, she explained with a smile. They all quickly walked back. Luckily there was a lot of food left for them. The next day, they started training when the sun got up, and not long after, Class 1B arrived. 𝐴𝐴. What are they doing here? Eri asked softly. They also got their licenses and we thought it might be a good idea to train together here, Aizawa explained. Everyone's training went well, and everyone started to improve. Izuku was first trained to condense his power in a small flame, that way he could train at full power without creating chaos and/or hurting others. His next step was pouring more power into the flame and gain greater strength than a minute ago. Eventually after a few hours he reached his limit and fell on his back. You sure got a lot of stamina. I never saw someone maintain full power for that long while pushing past it, Tiger stated with a smile. Well, I try, Izuku said, breathing. The training resumed and the day flew by. This time both classes had to make their own dinner together, and they were amazed by how many people could cook. Izuku, however, used himself to heat up the food, which made most people laugh. The day after, the training resumed like normal. Alright guys, now you have to train hard, but tonight you'll have time to play hard. We're going to hold a game between classes. Pixie Bob stated. It will be a scare game. One class will walk in the woods and hide around the route we make for them, and the others will go in as duos, Ragdoll stated. The rules are simple. The class that makes the other PSS their breathes the most wins. Tiger stated with an evil grin. And the one that makes the other SHT his breathes gets bonus points from me, he quickly added. I don't think I'm so happy about that, Kendo stated. Mean-ther, Izuku stated as they looked at each other and started to laugh. It was time for dinner. Izuku finally could take a rest as he was tired. Then it was time for the scare game. Everything went alright, well aside from Tiger smirking and laughing like a maniac whenever. A loud scream of fear could be heard. However, suddenly there was smoke above the trees. What's going on? Izuku asked as he saw it. 𝗚𝐼𝐸 looked up 𝐴𝐴 and her eyes widened. Suddenly 𝗧𝗧𝗟𝗘 bob flew off. When everyone looked at her, she was hit to the head badly. Izuku had covered himself in flames, and 𝗚𝐼𝐸 wanted to rush towards her. Magna suddenly stated. If you get any closer, I'll crush this little kitty's head, Magna stated. Erase her head, Vlad. Take everyone back to the camp. We'll take care of this, 𝗚𝐼𝐸 stated as Tiger stood beside her. Aizawa and Vlad nodded and ran off with all the other students. I'll keep Izuku with us. His power can help us save the other students still in the forest. For now he's out of sight behind me, 𝗚𝐼𝐸 stated with her telepathy to everyone's head as Aizawa nodded. Eri and Bakugo heard this as well but just had to accept it. You are going to take care of us. How will you do that? Magna asked with a grin. Suddenly Izuku appeared behind him and gave a spinning kick to the head, launching him away. Spinner then suddenly appeared and wanted to give Izuku a slash to the head with his weapon. However, Izuku blocked it with his arm. It's because of you that I couldn't redirect my attack and it hit my sister, Izuku said coldly as he grabbed the sword and smashed through it. He spun around and gave an elbow to Spinner's face, launching him through the trees. We'll have to split up. Tiger, you bring 𝗧𝗟𝗧𝗟𝗘 to safety. We'll search for the students. 𝗚𝐼𝐸 stated. It was already a while, so we'll head through the point where they should return, 𝗚𝐼𝐸 stated as Izuku nodded. They quickly ran into the forest. They found a few students. However, Tokoyami had lost control because of Shoji losing one of his dupli arms and bleeding badly from it. Tokoyami smashed a villain almost to bits, as Izuku then covered him in weak flames. However, the flames were good enough to calm Dark Shadow down. They were sent back to the camp. Eventually they found even the other students. Momo, however, was knocked out by a Nomu, and Class 1B tried protecting here by attacking and retreating. Izuku wanted to jump in to help them, however the Nomu suddenly walked away. Azui and Uraraka also showed up. However, Azui was bleeding from her tongue, and Uraraka walked a bit wobbly. She also had a small opening in her leg from a needle. You two alright? Izuku asked softly. Yeah, we were attacked as well, but she had to retreat. She was 𝗬𝐮𝐦𝐸𝐴 my BLD when I heard that they got their target, Uraraka stated. Target? Wait, everyone is here and back at the camp except for Ragdoll. 𝗚𝐼𝐸 suddenly stated. You guys head back, 𝗚𝐼𝐸 and I will go there now. Izuku stated. Please be careful, he added as Kendo nodded as she just took the leader spot for herself. Izuku and 𝗚𝐼𝐸 ran off. Suddenly they reached an open spot, but there were two people there. A man covered in burning scars, Dabi. However, when Izuku saw the other person, his eyes widened. Sarah. He asked, however, right as he spoke out that name, a spear of flame shot through his body, making him cough. Izuku. 𝗚𝐼𝐸 shouted as she helped him up. How? This shouldn't be possible, Izuku weakly stated as he got up while being in pain. Is that really? If it's you, why are you attacking me? Izuku asked as she attacked again, this time by shooting a fireball which Izuku took head-on and was sent flying. This is bad, 𝗚𝐼𝐸 thought. Izuku got back up. Stop attacking and answer me. Izuku shouted as he walked forward. 𝗚𝐼𝐸 wanted to take this as an opportunity and gave a spinning kick through the air. However, this was blocked by Izuku. Izuku. She was shocked. Don't hurt her. Izuku yelled as he only used equal force to block 𝗚𝐼𝐸. Izuku then pushed some more power in and pushed her away. He stood between 𝗚𝐼𝐸 and the villains. Is that really her? Izuku asked the villain as he had seen the villain in that attack. Well, does she look like it? Dabi asked with a smirk. Yes, now tell me. Is it her? What did you do to her? Why is she attacking me? Izuku shouted. 𝗚𝐼𝐸 was completely in shock. It seems he knew the girl, but she was also surprised that Izuku blocked her. Erase her head. I need your assistance. Something is going on here. If this keeps up, Izuku will be in danger, she stated with her telepathy towards him. Izuku took a few steps forward as suddenly pillars of flames shot up around him. 𝗚𝐼𝐸's eyes widened as this looked like Izuku's power. Suddenly blasts of fire shot at Izuku from all sides, all very powerful, as she heard Izuku scream in pain. Gate of Hell. the girl stated as the spot where Izuku stood between the pillars was filled with intense flames. She heard him scream even louder as she saw him limply flying up before falling to the floor. Hurry up, at this rate he'll die. She used her telepathy again. She wanted to help him. Stay back. Izuku shouted as he grunted in pain. He tried getting up but fell to the floor. 𝗬𝗓 just smirked. Then the other villains showed up. Izuku noticed 𝗀𝗬 and 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗘, as well as 𝗀𝐻𝐿, although he didn't know them by name. Izuku managed to get up, however he was very weak. Eventually someone crashed down on him as 𝗀𝗍𝗄 landed on Izuku's back. Izuku shot flames up to burn his feet, however 𝗀𝗍𝗄 jumped away in time. Tell me, who was your target? Why did you come here? 𝗀𝗍𝗍𝗟 asked. Our target was one of yours, 𝗬𝗓 told 𝗀𝗍𝗍 as her eyes widened. Ragdoll. She thought. As for the reason, we just came here to show those wannabe heroes that we could destroy them anytime we see fit, 𝗬𝗓 stated. Just like we did back then, 𝗬𝗓 stated as Izuku shot up and launched at him. His eyes now completely red, anger taking over. However, before reaching 𝗬𝗓, Sarah jumped in front of 𝗬𝗓. 𝗀𝗍𝗍 gasped with wide eyes as she saw that Izuku pulled back his attack. He then got kicked to the head as he fell to the ground. She placed her hand towards him. No, stop. If you do that he might die. 𝗀𝗍𝗍 stated almost in despair. Gate of Hell, she stated as pillars shot up again covering the area in the middle of it with intense flames. Izuku gave a weak groan in pain as he shot up and fell again. While the attack gave loud raging sound, it was slowly overtaken by 𝗀𝗍𝗍's screaming Oswell. Izuku lay limply on the floor and 𝗬𝗓 walked towards him. He lowered himself to a knee. You still alive down there? He asked as he slapped Izuku's cheek. If you are and you want to know the truth about what happened, look for Overhaul and ask him the truth. The question then will be if you'll be alive long enough to do anything with the information, 𝗬𝗓 stated as he got back up. We're leaving, 𝗬𝗓 stated as warp gates opened up. The villains, as well as the Nomu that just arrived, jumped through the warp gate. Don't go, Izuku whispered weakly without anyone hearing it before he passed out. Izuku! Izuku! 𝗀𝗍𝗍 shouted as she ran towards him. Izuku was gravely injured. He had a hole in his stomach from the burning spear. He also got a powerful attack from the back by 𝗀𝗍𝗓 and was hit twice while weakened by the Gate of Hell, which had tremendous power. She held his body up in her arms as she had tears in her eyes. She just made an amazing friend and had to see him in such a state, but mostly she had those tears because she could do nothing but watch it happen because Izuku blocked her. 𝗧𝗏 and Vlad showed up shortly after, however. They gasped with wide eyes as they saw Izuku's state. What the hell happened here? 𝗧𝗏 asked as he saw terrible burns on Izuku's body as well as the small hole in Izuku's stomach where BLD was streaming out of. We were attacked by a villain covered in scars which looked like burns. He had a girl besides him. Izuku seemed shocked to see her, and he was being attacked. I tried to step in, but instead he blocked me. The other attacking villains showed up as well. However, he was hit twice by tremendous power while being hurt already, she stated in a light panic. So those intense flames weren't his? 𝗧𝗏 asked. No, it was the power of that girl, 𝗀𝗍𝗍 stated. It couldn't be. He thought. No time for that, he needs treatment right away. 𝗧𝗏 stated as 𝗀𝗍𝗍 lifted him up and ran to camp. Once there, it didn't take long for a helicopter from the hospital to arrive. Izuku was quickly placed in there before anyone else could see him, and 𝗧𝗧𝗍𝗑 laid unconscious next to him as they were both brought to the hospital. Izuku and 𝗧𝗧𝗍𝗑 were both taken away by the helicopter, heading towards the hospital. Izuku was in extremely bad shape and needed immediate treatment to survive. 𝗧𝗧𝗍𝗑 had sustained a bad wound to the head. The other students were injured as well, but nothing life-threatening. 𝗧𝗏, Vlad and an upset 𝗀𝗍𝗍 returned to the camp where all the students were waiting. However, all the students noticed that Izuku wasn't there with them. Where is Izuku? Wasn't he with you, 𝗀𝗍𝗍? Kirishima asked. 𝗀𝗍𝗍 just placed her hand in front of her mouth, not being able to say a word. Izuku has been taken away in the helicopter together with 𝗧𝗧𝗍𝗑, 𝗧𝗏 stated bluntly. What? Class 1A and 1B shouted as they heard it. What happened? Eri asked worriedly. 𝗫𝐬𝐴 still couldn't say a word. She felt guilty and bad. She wanted to help Izuku, but he had blocked her and told her to stay away, yet she had to watch how Izuku got badly beaten. Shall I explain it to them? Aizawa asked as 𝗫𝐬𝐴 just nodded. Tiger walked towards her and comforted her. Seeing 𝗫𝐬𝐴's reaction, it's something very bad, 𝗀𝐿𝐿 stated in a serious tone as Aizawa nodded. I'm sure you first want to know the state Izuku is in before I explain what happened, don't you? Aizawa asked as everyone nodded. I'm just going to be honest, there is nothing to gain by just trying to get around it. Izuku is very close to death, Aizawa stated as their eyes widened. How is that possible? He's so strong, he should be able to handle a few villains, especially if he has someone watching his back. Iida stated. That's just the point, he blocked me instead of the villains, 𝗫𝐬𝐴 stated as this shocked everyone, but the biggest shock came after that. He didn't even fight back, he just took the attacks head-on, he didn't defend, he didn't attack, nothing, she explained. Which hospital is he going to? 𝗀𝐿𝐿 asked. The best one we've got in our city, Aizawa explained. 𝗀𝐿𝐿 knew immediately where he had to be. He quickly ran outside followed by Eri as he then used his explosions to fly away. Eri used her wind quirk to fly 𝗬𝗧𝗟. No one blamed them, they were the closest to Izuku. We should head back 𝗬𝗧𝗟, Aizawa stated. We're coming too, Tiger stated. We have to look after Pixie Bob and have to search for Ragdoll, and we're also worried about Izuku, he explained. They got on the buses to head back to the city. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Izuku had arrived but was immediately placed under emergency treatment. Pixie Bob had a bad head wound and was also being treated in another room. It was a bad injury but nothing close to what Izuku had. Izuku's wounds were so bad they even had to ask Recovery Girl from UA to come to save his life. After a while 𝗀𝐿𝐿 and Eri arrived at the hospital. Eri immediately ran inside. Good day, can I help you? The receptionist asked. We are looking for a patient that got brought in recently. His name is Izuku Midoriya, she stated, still very upset. 𝗀𝐿𝐿 had joined her now but stayed silent. Ah yes, there was a helicopter requested for a female pro hero, and another boy came in with her, the receptionist stated as she looked in her computer. I'm sorry to say, but they are still busy treating him, she stated. She noticed the worried look on Eri's face. But I can bring you towards the room, you can wait there until they are done, she stated with a smile. Eri and 𝗀𝐿𝐿 nodded and followed the woman. They arrived at the door and sat down. Don't worry, I'm sure he'll make it, the best doctors and nurses are working on him, and even Recovery Girl was asked for accidents. With all those people there is no way they wouldn't be able to save him, the woman stated in an attempt to comfort them. Eri sat on the ground, knees up, arms on her knees and face buried in her arms. 𝗀𝐿𝐿 sat next to her and placed an arm around her to comfort her. It was one of those times that 𝗀𝐿𝐿 didn't care to show his soft side. The gang he grew up with was family to him, so Eri was basically a sister to him and Izuku a brother. He heard Eri cry as the stress and worry finally arrived. He couldn't blame her though, even though he didn't really show it, he was worried 𝗬𝗧𝗟. But he was also troubled. I wonder. He started taking her attention. Why would he block another pro from helping him and take the attacks head-on without so much as blocking or trying to dodge it, he stated. I don't know, she stated sobbing. That's really not like him. I heard he was very fierce against the villains we saw, and he was ready to face the Nomu that was attacking Momo and 1B, so why, she asked out loud. A silence fell until a while later, Class 1A and 1B showed up with the teachers 𝗬𝗧𝗟 as 𝗫𝐬𝐴 and Tiger. Are you two alright? Was the first thing 𝗫𝐬𝐴 asked. We're hanging in there, Eri stated weakly. She was exhausted from worry. A few students from Class 1B went to get some drinks, and when they got back a door opened up and the doctor walked out. How is Izuku doing? Eri immediately asked. He's out of danger, he's resting right now, but he was in terrible shape, the doctor explained. He had shattered ribs, he also had a small hole in his stomach, luckily it missed any vital organs, but he also had terrible burn wounds. If they were any worse, then we wouldn't have been able to heal that, the doctor stated. Suddenly 𝗀𝐿𝐿 looked as if he was freaking out. He jumped up and grabbed the doctor aggressively by the coat. Cut the CRP. There is no way Izuku was badly burned. 𝗀𝐿𝐿 shouted. 𝗀𝐿𝐿 calmed down. Aizawa stated sternly. Shut up, he shouted. Izuku can't be burned by flames. The only flames that ever burned him. That's just impossible. 𝐻𝗠𝐽𝐻 shouted again. They noticed Eri's reaction was shock. The only flames that were able to burn Izuku were the flames from 𝗧𝗓, and that was because her heat exceeded his. 𝐻𝗠𝐽𝐻 shouted, now answering the question everyone held in their head. Everyone was wondering who he meant, but now they knew. But that's impossible. She died. 𝐻𝗠𝐽𝐻 repeated, this time with tears in his eyes. Sorry, I don't know any of the details. I just told you what we found on him, the doctor stated calmly. He then brought them to his room where he was resting. It's a big load of CRP. Izuku can't be burned by flames. 𝐻𝗠𝐽𝐻 repeated in the room. Sorry to ask, 𝗏𝗏𝐿 said, taking his attention. You mentioned 𝗧𝗓, that's his sister, right? 𝗏𝗏𝐿 asked as Eri and 𝐻𝗠𝐽𝐻 nodded. Do you maybe have a picture of her? I was there, I can verify, she stated. I do, Eri stated. After Izuku went back to his house, he made me a copy so I'd have one too, she stated as she took the picture out of her pocket. There is no doubt about it, 𝗏𝗏𝐿 stated after watching the picture for a bit. It was her, 𝗏𝗏𝐿 stated as everyone had wide eyes. Are you sure? 𝐻𝗠𝐽𝐻 and Eri asked in unison. Yes. Now it also makes sense, I had a talk with him, he stated that he didn't fight her for real because he didn't want to hurt her. That explains why he didn't fight back and blocked me, she explained. But how she died that day, so how is she still alive? 𝐻𝗠𝐽𝐻 asked. That, I don't know, I do know she had some weird gear on her head. Izuku kept calling out to her but without response. She didn't finish him off, in fact they didn't care if he made it or not, 𝗏𝗏𝐿 stated. Izuku was hit by a powerful move called Gate of Hell. It was extremely powerful and very deadly. She hit him twice with it too, even after Muscular shattered his ribs. But if they really wanted to finish him off, they would have done so. In fact, the villain with scars like burns whispered something to him before he left, 𝗏𝗏𝐿 stated. I didn't hear what he said, but he did leave. If they really wanted to finish him off they hadn't whispered something to him, she added. This raised a lot of question with the pros and teachers. So she's really alive? Eri asked. Yes, but from what I heard from Izuku how she is, I think she's being controlled with that headgear, 𝗏𝗏𝐿 stated. For the information, the headgear looks similar to the powering up headgear from the first movie, although it's something only on the top of her head, as the powering up gear also had pieces close to the mouth. Afterwards 𝗏𝗏𝐿 and Tiger took their leave from the room and went to see Pixie Bob. Everyone else except for 𝐻𝗠𝐽𝐻 and Eri left Oswell. Aizawa went to bring his report to both the police and to Nizu. Izuku had been woken up not long after 𝐻𝗠𝐽𝐻 and Eri left Oswell, however his body hurt like hell. The next morning the big three came to see him very early. Hey, seems you are awake, 𝗏𝗏𝐿 stated. Yeah, but my body hurts like crazy, Izuku stated weakly. So what are you three up to? Izuku asked. We've got a meeting today, we're on a joined mission with our agencies, 𝗏𝗏𝐿 explained. Really? What's it about? Izuku asked. Well, we can't go into detail, but we've been following and observing a villain. He's making a drag to temporarily boost quirks, giving them much more power, and even more range. For example, if someone could manipulate a small box, he could suddenly manipulate an entire hall, 𝗏𝗏𝐿 explained. I see, who would be stupid enough to make such a thing? Izuku asked. Well, I heard he's been working with the League of Villains, and that they are supporting him. We found his hideout and it looks like a giant mansion, however we found out he even has an entire layer underground. 𝗏𝗏𝐿 stated. Sounds more like a small fortress than, Izuku joked. Maybe, but the person running it is extremely dangerous. He's called Kai Chisaki, 𝗏𝗏𝐿 stated as Izuku felt a fire lit inside him. I see. Well, I wish you the best of luck, Izuku stated as he tried to act normally. When will you have to infiltrate? Izuku asked. Well, first we have to confirm that the drags are real, and also that they are there. That's what this meeting is for, to watch all their hideouts, but the mansion is the most logical one, 𝗏𝗏𝐿 explained. That's all we can say though, we've already said too much, 𝗏𝗏𝐿 stated, scratching his head. It's all right, Izuku stated. Well, have a good rest, we'll come see you after the meeting, 𝗏𝗏𝐿 stated as the three of them smiled and walked out. Izuku smiled until they were gone. After that he clenched his fists. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. Overhaul, he said silently as he gritted his teeth while remembering what Dabi said. If you want the truth, you'll have to see Overhaul and hope you live long enough to do anything with the information. Later on the day, Bakugo and Eri walked in and were glad to see him awake. However, Izuku had a serious face. What's wrong? Eri asked worriedly. Bakugo, could you close the door? There is something I have to talk to you two about, Izuku stated seriously. Bakugo walked to the door to close him. I'm so glad you are back with us, Eri stated as she tackled him and kept giving him a lot of kisses. Izuku smiled a little and answered all of her kisses, however the tackle of hers still hurt a little bit. His wounds had healed, and the pain was gone for the most part, however he wasn't anywhere near completely recovered. He could still feel his wounds burn, especially the burns and the hole in his stomach which he had. So, what did you want to talk about? Bakugo asked. I'm going to sneak out of this room after our talk, and I want you two to come with me, he stated as this surprised Eri and Bakugo. What do you mean? You have to rest, Izuku, you were almost killed. Eri stated. I can't lay around like this, you probably have heard already, Sarah is alive, Izuku stated. Hearing him say that without any hesitation and so seriously, they knew it just had to be true. They still had their doubts even after hearing it from Mandalay, but hearing Izuku say it like that really confirmed it. All right, you've got my attention, speak up, what are we going to do? Bakugo asked. So you'll come with me then? Izuku asked as Bakugo nodded. The villain that probably controlled her then whispered something to me. He said that if I wanted to know the truth I'd had to see Overhaul, Izuku stated as Bakugo and Eri's eyes widened. Are you insane? She shouted. Do you want to die? She asked again. No, but I have to know the truth, and I have to get her back to our side. They are making her do horrible things against her will. If that's the case, people will soon see her as a villain and she will get hurt, and I can't let that happen. I have to get her back to us, Izuku stated. And you are serious about doing this? Bakugo asked as Izuku nodded with a serious face. Fine, I'll support you, he sighed. You can't be serious, Bakugo. Eri yelled. Eri, look at him, does it look like he'll leave it be? No matter what we do, he'll find his way to get there with or without us, so instead of letting him go alone, I'm going to go too, Bakugo explained. Fine. Then I'm coming too, she stated. I also have to settle things with him anyway, she sighed. So how do we even find him? She asked. Earlier, Mirio, Tamaki and Nijire were here. They told me they had a secret mission and accidentally spilled too much information, probably because I'm supposed to be stuck here anyway, Izuku stated. They said they were after him because of a quirk boosting drag, and also because he worked with the League of Villains and are gaining power. Today would just be a meeting, but they told me his location, and he told me there is an underground layer Oswell, Izuku explained. Overhaul is probably below that mansion, he stated. And you want to barge in there and force him to speak, don't you? Bakugo asked. I don't care what others will think of me. The whole world may turn against me, I don't care. I've let my sister down before, and I'm not letting it happen again, Izuku stated. Eri and Bakugo were shocked by his words, however they agreed with him. They'd make enemies of the world and end their hero career if needed be to try and save Sarah, then let her be used as a tool. And be marked a villain to be captured or killed. But if we are going to do this, we'll have to give it all we've got to stay serious no matter what, and we can't hold back a single moment if we want this to work, Izuku stated. The three of us are strong and fast enough to avoid each other's attacks, and if there is force dragging us in, we're powerful enough to break free from it. We can't hold anything back, especially not in the enemy's base, Izuku stated seriously as Eri and Bakugo nodded. Izuku got up, Eri turned around as Izuku then changed into his clothes which they brought with them. He was wearing a white shirt with a light blue vest over it and a black briefs. You guys ready? Izuku asked. How do we get out though? Bakugo asked. Yeah, if we casually walk out, people will notice you and try to stop you, Eri stated. I'll just start running without hesitation without looking back, Izuku stated. Heh, simple-minded freak, Bakugo stated. Well, guess from who I learned it, Izuku joked. Fair enough, let's go, Bakugo stated. Izuku opened the door and immediately ran outside through the halls. A few doctors noticed him and tried to stop him, However, Izuku was faster than their reaction. Bakugo and Eri followed him as they were close behind him. They found a stairs and they quickly made their way down. Once they arrived at the ground floor, security was waiting for them. Bakugo and Eri stepped back. However, Izuku just stepped forward. "I'd like you to step aside," Izuku stated seriously. "Patients should keep resting, especially those who were near death. We have our orders to keep you inside if you wanted to get out," the leader of the security stated. Izuku activated his quirk. He looked at them with a cold gaze as his arm was being covered by flames. "It wasn't a request," Izuku stated. "Get him, men!" The leader shouted. "Izuku, watch out!" Eri yelled. "Sorry, normally I wouldn't do this, but I can't afford to be stopped here," Izuku stated as pulled back his arm. "Burning fist," Izuku stated as a fist of flames shot from his arm, but it was followed by a beam of flames from his arm blasting through the guards. "He's really serious about this, he's really risking it all," Eri stated with wide eyes. "He'd do the same for us, and we should do the same, 𝐴𝐵, Bakugo stated as he ran forward 𝐴𝐵 while blasting the guards down that managed to get up. They all managed to get up again as Izuku and Bakugo took a fighting stance next to each other ready to go at it. However, suddenly a strong wind passed them and slammed the guards to the ground. "Let's go, we don't have time for them now, and if we take too long then I'm sure pros will show up," Eri stated. Izuku and Bakugo looked at each other and nodded. "Thanks, Eri," Izuku stated as the three of them ran past the guards. They made it outside and already heard sirens. "Guess they notified the police when we forced our way through," Izuku stated. "You guys still sure you want to do this?" Izuku asked. "Family before everything. Just like you, we'd rather lose our hero career and turn everyone against us to save Sarah, than to let it be and let them use her," Bakugo stated as Eri nodded. "She's your sister by blood, and we know we'll never get the bond with her or you like you two have, but she's our sister 𝐴𝐵, they both said. Izuku smiled and suddenly created wings of flames while grabbing their arms. They quickly flew off. Bakugo and Eri were amazed by the wings of flames. "Don't sell yourselves short, it may not be as strong as the bond Sarah and I have, but the two of you are darn close," Izuku stated, tightening his grip around their arms. Bakugo and Eri both felt proud after hearing that and smiled. "Hold on tight," Izuku stated as they grabbed his arm with their other arm before he blasted off. It didn't take long to reach the spot Mirio mentioned. It was indeed a mansion, and there were a lot of people walking outside on the front yard. The place was defended by a large gate and wall. Izuku landed in front of it. "We'll go with Plan T," Izuku said with a smile, looking at Bakugo who had a grin on his face. "Mind telling me what Plan T is?" she stated. "Take him by storm," Izuku said as he fist bumped with Bakugo. "Boys will be boys," Eri laughed as she then stepped in front of Izuku. "I'm going to make you promise to stay alive," she stated, giving him a kiss. "I expect you to return it after we're done here," she stated with a smile as Izuku smiled back. The three of them got ready. "Don't hesitate," Eri stated. "Don't back down," Bakugo said. "Don't hold back," Izuku finished. The three of them smiled as Izuku's eyes started to glow. "Let's go," he shouted as the three of them charged at the door. Bakugo blasted the door open as Izuku and Eri began using their quirks 𝐴𝐵. Izuku jumped over Bakugo as streams of flames shot from behind him towards the villains he could see. Eri also rushed inside from besides Bakugo as she grabbed everyone together with her wind, creating a tornado and slamming them into the ground to make sure they are unconscious. Afterwards they bursted inside. There was only one man waiting. "Leave this to me," Izuku stated as he walked towards the person. "You idiot. Do you know who you are messing with right now? You'll sign your own death." The person stated. "Oh, I know very well who I am messing with, although I doubt he knows who he messed with," Izuku stated as his face was dark, only showing the glow from his eyes. Izuku grabbed the person by his shirt and lifted him up from the ground. "Now you are going to tell me exactly where 𝐴𝐵 is, and if he's in the layer below this place then you are going to open it," Izuku stated coldly, making the person almost possess his breaths. "He's I. Indeed in the L layer below, but I'm not opening it," he stated. "𝐴𝐵 is way scarier. He'll disassemble me," the person stated. Well, I'll give you an option then, be disassembled, or you can kick the bucket by my flames. You rather burn to death or his? Izuku asked. Would he really go that far? Eri asked. I doubt it, but he has to be this way, otherwise they would just laugh at him. He's bluffing to make him open up, Bakugo whispered. Hey Izuku, kill the guy already, we can find someone else to open up, Bakugo shouted to make it more convincing. You see, we don't have much time, or patience for that matter right now, so you've got 5 seconds to give your answer. If you won't do it then I'll burn you to ash, Izuku stated holding his other hand up covered in flames. No, please wait. I'll do it, he stated terrified. Izuku threw him to the ground. Do it, Izuku stated coldly still charging his flames. The person quickly opened up and moved aside. As a thanks Izuku didn't harm the man. You better get out of here now, it might get a bit rough, Izuku stated as he casually walked down. They came downstairs and they could either move right or left. Suddenly, the hall seemed to move, and a wall came up on their right. Izuku lifted his arm and blasted the wall to bits and moved that way. Every time there were other ways to go, there was always a path getting blocked and Izuku just destroyed it. So are we really going to right way? Eri asked as they casually walked through a long hall. So far there haven't been any other corners, and there were a few doors. Seeing these doors we are, Izuku stated. So how did you figure out the way to get here? Bakugo asked. There were multiple ways, however only one got sealed off every time. What's the point of sealing of a way that leads to nothing, so I just destroyed those walls and took that path, 'cause that would most likely be the path where they are hiding something, Izuku stated. And you still came knowing the risks? Overhaul asked suddenly from far in front of them. Yes, I came to find you, Overhaul, Izuku stated seriously. Did you now? Did you come here to get killed by me? Overhaul asked. I came here to learn the truth about what happened, Izuku stated. You staged my sister's death, didn't you? Izuku asked. Yes, we sure did. It's true I disassembled her, however I repaired her Oswell. Compress then captured her and took her away, Overhaul stated. So she was alive all this time, Izuku stated clenching his fists. Yes, we worked under order from Shigaraki and his boss. The boss said he wanted both your quirks, one of yours would be powerful, but together would create a flame on a whole other LVL, Overhaul explained. We captured her first when we got the chance. We hoped to break you with staging her death. Sadly it didn't turn out as planned. You lost control and those brats came to save you, Overhaul stated. I'll tell you a little secret, Overhaul stated. Their boss can take away quirks, Overhaul said as their eyes widened. He was about to take the quirk of your sister, but stopped before starting. He had another idea, he explained. What would that be? Izuku asked. Apparently, he has a friend of All Might locked up somewhere, but he's a scientist. The scientist has to do whatever he says to keep his daughter alive. They made him create something to control people, and eventually he wanted to use your sister to get you, Overhaul stated. I left them after hearing that. I might be a villain, but I do have things that I am against. One of those is using a family member to capture or kill another family member, Overhaul stated. So that's why you killed my mother, huh? Izuku asked. To be perfectly honest, she wasn't in the plan to die. We did plan the explosion, but we would leave her only hurt, not killed. We didn't know she was so close by the door, Overhaul stated. You'll have my apologies for that. She was an unnecessary death, he stated. Bakugo growled and stepped forward but was stopped by Izuku. Why did you say that you killed her as a warning? Izuku asked seriously. Well, you have to come over scary if you want to capture and break someone. I couldn't have said oops it was an accident, sorry for that at that time since it would the threat away at the time, Overhaul explained. I see. I'll believe you at least on that, Izuku stated. That doesn't take away the horrible things you've done, Izuku stated. That's right, and I don't regret them. I'm rotten to the core and I'll do anything to achieve my goals, Overhaul stated as Izuku gritted his teeth. So where is Sarah now? Izuku asked. She's alive, but the leader of the villains has her under his command. You'll only see her if he wants you to see her, Overhaul stated. I'll find my way to them, Izuku stated. Thank you for the information, Izuku stated as he turned around. You think I'll let you just walk out? You destroyed my gate, beat my men, broke down a few walls, and stormed my house, and you are even trying to leave with my daughter. Overhaul stated with venom in his voice. Izuku glanced at him over his shoulder. She's not your daughter, you just believe that. If she's something, then she's my girlfriend, and I'll never give her to people like you, Izuku stated. Bakugo and Eri both grinned at how Izuku has become. Why don't we fight then? The winner gets Eri, Overhaul stated. I don't fight meaningless battles. I already have her and I don't plan on giving her to you, Izuku stated. I see, Overhaul answered as Izuku walked back to his friends. You know, when we captured 𝗧𝗧, she kept on crying, she kept crying your name, and begging me to tell her if you were alive, Overhaul stated as Izuku gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. I told her you ran away, abandoning her like a little beach, and that we hunted you down like a rabbit and killed you in cold blood, Overhaul stated as Izuku was having troubles holding back. Bakugo and Eri noticed this and wanted to rush to his side. You know what she told me after hearing that? Overhaul asked. She said to me, then kill me right now, I have no point living anymore, he said with narrowed eyes. Izuku then disappeared and threw his knee towards Overhaul's face as he appeared just in front of him. His charge created a lot of force and flames, however it was still blocked by a villain named 𝗧𝗧𝗟. That is some hardcore power you've got there, 𝗧𝗧𝗟 stated looking at Izuku. His arm felt numb, and he was pushed back a lot which never happened before. Get lost, my fight is not with you, Izuku stated as 𝗧𝗧𝗟 then charged towards Izuku. Then from the shadows, his other henchman charged 𝗀𝗧𝗟. �ferno-ray, Izuku stated as flames shot from his body swallowing the villains and leaving them all badly burned on the floor. I see, you've made that power from back then your own, you might have even become more powerful, Overhaul stated. It's true, in this form, I'm no match for you, he stated as he touched 𝗧𝗧𝗟. So I guess I'll have to fuse myself with him, Overhaul stated as 𝗧𝗧𝗟 disappeared before he merged with him. He'll turn into that form in the anime as Izuku had to use full cowl 100%, you won't escape this time, I will kill you right here and now, and take Eri back with me, she has no need for those petty feelings called friendship and love, all she has to do is obey me in every command and give her life guarding me. Overhaul shouted in a twisted way. You'll die trying, Izuku stated as flames engulfed him. Overhaul charged at him with a punch as Izuku countered with his own. The force destroyed the ceiling on multiple floors, the mansion even broke down and came down 𝗀𝗧𝗟. However, Izuku's flames which shot up from his clash destroyed the mansion and turned it to ash. Izuku then grabbed his arm and threw him up into the air. Find the drags then help me, Izuku stated as created wings of flames and flew up. He shot up with blinding speed and appeared in front of Overhaul who was in one way or another just floating in the air. You'll never have her. Eri is mine, I won't let anyone else have her. He shouted as he threw another punch at Izuku. Izuku deflected the fist and kicked him in the face. He placed a lot of force behind it, but he barely moved. The kick had his effect, but instead of being sent flying, it only gave a minimal movement. Do you like it? This happens when I fuse and take some of the drag to enhance my quirk, Overhaul stated. So the drags are here then, good to know, I'm sure Bakugo and Eri will find it then, Izuku smirked. What? Overhaul shouted as he shot towards the hole in the ground. Nova Crusher, Izuku said as his move crashed into Overhaul's stomach and launching him away from the hole. You little you'll regret doing that, Overhaul stated. I regret many things, letting my sister be taken away, and letting her get hurt like that, hurting my friends their feelings, worrying everyone, but this isn't one of them, Izuku stated. Overhaul then slapped the ground shooting enormous spikes towards Izuku from behind him. However, Bakugo suddenly flew up from the hole with Eri's wind underneath his feet. AP shot autocannon. He shouted as he shot small explosions with tremendous power to the spikes, destroying them. After that, Eri also appeared. Did you two find it? Izuku asked. Right here, Bakugo said as he held up a case. Give that back. Overhaul shouted as he slapped the ground again to create more spikes while rushing towards them. Bakugo destroyed the spikes again as Izuku headbutt Overhaul to push him away. Izuku then uppercut him, lifting him up a little in the air. Eri slided over the ground underneath him as she spinned around, giving a heel kick close to the ground followed by a jumped spinning kick with her wind to create an incredibly strong tornado. Overhaul was sent high into the air. Izuku placed his hands together and shot fire blasts like meteorites towards him as Bakugo used his normal AP shot. The moves moved in sync and crashed into him, however he wasn't beaten yet. Izuku held up his hand as first a small fireball appeared, after that a fireball with crushing weight. Eri and Bakugo could feel the power inside it. Izuku shot it as Eri used her wind to speed it up, also powering it up with a tornado strike behind it. She moved Bakugo up behind Overhaul as he created an explosion immensely big and extremely powerful and lethal. All three of the attacks crashed into Overhaul, creating a massive explosion, as well as taking the attention of half of the city. Once the dust cleared, they noticed that Overhaul hadn't fused with Rappa, he only used Rappa to cover his body. However, that was destroyed by the attacks. Suddenly pros arrived from all sides as they saw the massive explosion, as well as the monstrous Overhaul. However, when they arrived they saw 3 kids breathing there. Izuku had fallen to his knees breathing, Bakugo couldn't use his arms from the strain, and Eri was breathing because of pushing her power to the limit while also supporting Bakugo and Izuku. Mirio, Tamaki and Nijire also showed up, however they went pale as they saw Izuku breathing on his knees. "Izuku, what the hell are you doing here?" Mirio asked, worried and surprised. Izuku glanced at him but didn't respond. Other pros arrived as well, everyone from the meeting was there, as they noticed Ryukyu, Night Eye and Fat Gum, even Aizawa was there who looked in shock. Once Aizawa noticed Izuku, Bakugo and Eri breathing on the ground as well, he figured why he got a call from the hospital, and he understood what the massive explosion was. "Are you kids alright?" he asked. "Just a bit tired," Eri stated. "Izuku, what were you thinking?" Aizawa asked a bit softly, knowing what was on Izuku's mind. "The villain told me, if I wanted answers, I had to see Overhaul," Izuku explained shortly. "And did you get them?" Aizawa asked. "More than I wanted," Izuku answered. "Well, let's get back to UA for now," Aizawa stated. "Before that, Mirio, we've got it," Izuku stated as Eri then gave him the case with the drags. "He wasn't hostile when we came here. However, he started when he started talking about taking Eri for himself," Izuku explained as the police was listening in Oswell, writing down everything he said as some sort of report. "He took the drags. Luckily Bakugo and Eri were still down there and were looking, they found it by accident," Izuku stated. Mirio knew he was lying about some parts, but still smiled at him. "You smart son of a," Mirio thought. He got his answers, beat Overhaul, helped gaining the drags, and this way they won't be blamed for the destruction, he thought. Aizawa noticed this as well and smiled. "We captured another one from Overhaul's men," a policeman stated as he walked towards them. "He isn't with them, actually he helped us. He showed me the way to Overhaul, he actually told me about the drags and asked me to arrest Overhaul if I had the chance," Izuku lied. The man was surprised, he thought Izuku would only save himself and his friends, but he was actually sticking up for him. "I see, I'll release him then," the police officer stated. Izuku walked past the man and whispered. "Don't waste this second chance," Izuku stated. Overhaul was taken in by the police and the man was free now. He no longer had to follow Overhaul out of fear, he was free now. Izuku, Bakugo and Eri headed back to UA after many pros thanked them for capturing Overhaul and getting the drags. Once at UA, everyone was happy to see Izuku back on his feet. However, they noticed he was very weak. All Might and the other teachers as well as Class 1B were there as well. Everyone had been worried about Izuku. Suddenly All Might got a call and everyone was surprised to see him in shock after the call. "What's going on, All Might?" Aizawa asked. "That was 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, my former mentor, he was working with the police, they are putting together a team." All Might stated. "The team? What for?" Nizu asked. "They found the hideout for the League of Villains. They are making a team to capture them."